Tanuka.
Good morning. Hi, Joseph. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
No, thank you. It's so nice to see you online.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Good morning, colleagues and everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
Yes. Okay, good morning. Apologies, I'm online a bit, but let's give like 3 minutes for me, especially to set up and we'll start. I hope that's okay.
Hi, Violet.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
You're welcome. You're welcome. The dean is the meeting is going to be chaired by the dean, and yeah, he's setting up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right then.
Nyamba sana amasuti.
So good morning once again, colleagues. I hope you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Dean.
Yes, maybe my name's David Katete. I'm off duty now, but I'm chairing because the acting dean is somehow conflicted, is a supervisor, and I had to chip in, and I guess that is okay. And without much ado, we are going to start the defense, but I want to confirm that we do have the panels around, particularly the most important person, and that is the discussant, or whom we call the opponent, or who has been also the external examiner. I hope he or she is on. That's Associate Professor Violet Nanyu. Do we have him there or online?
He's there.
Yes,
Oh.
I am here. Good morning.
Oh, habari yako?
Nzuri sana, labda yako.
Yo, mzuri. So now maybe I will also briefly switch on my video, but I will put it off in a few minutes just because of the connectivity. So that's the most important person. Two important persons for today. We have the opponent who I've just introduced to you from our sister country. Let me just a second. That is Associate Professor Violent Nanyu from the School of Arts and Social Sciences, abbreviated as SAS, in Moi University in Kenya. Here, you are most welcome to today's event. And then the other panelists, we do have Dr. Gerard Mbowa. I don't know whether he's on yet.
I'm here.
Okay, you are welcome, Dr. Mbowa.
Thank you.
And Dr. Roy Mubuke, is he on?
Yeah.
You are welcome, Mubuke. Dr. John Barugahare.
Yes, I'm here. I'm online.
Welcome, sir. And Professor Joseph Ocheng, are you on?
Good morning, Dean, and good morning, colleagues.
All right, so that's our panel, and I think that is it. But essentially, this is how it is going to do to go and help our candidate is on. Ekusai, are you on? Either online or in the boardroom?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. So this is how it is going to go. So we'll allow the candidate to present, to make a presentation for around maximum 40 minutes. It could be shorter. And then after that, she will have an engagement, a one-on-one engagement with the main discussant, the opponent, whom we've just introduced, for about an hour, preferably less. If it could be 40 minutes or less, but that will be between the discussant and to determine. And after that, we'll have each of the panelists will have around, I think, a maximum of 10 minutes to also interact with the candidate and put the name or the face to the book. And after that, then 1 or 2 burning questions from the main public. And that will be followed by a breakout session between the panelists and the session chair to gauge the score. And after that, we will come back and announce the results, which we usually call the white or gray smoke, to the candidate and the audience. And depending on the mood there in the boardroom, there could be a few remarks if we have the time. But that is it, essentially. Is there anything you would want to add on or delete, boardroom?
No, thank you.
Okay, that is it. And I think without much ado, let's have the candidate do her presentation in about 40 minutes or less. Thank you. Over to you, Ekusai.
Thank you, Dean. Can you see my slides?
Yes, I see them for me.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. My name is Deborah Ekusai Sebatta, and I'm glad to share with you my thesis presentation that looked at the regulation of data sharing in collaborative human genomic research with a focus on the ethical, social, and legal implications. So the next slide is the outline of the presentation that we will follow. And as a way of definition, genomics research is studying an organism's entire genome, its gene interactions, and the environmental responses. Collaboration is the formal or informal partnerships between researchers or institutions. And important to note is that in this study, we looked at domestic and international collaborations, and data sharing is making data available to others, and the others could be researchers or putting it in repositories that anyone can access globally. I will be using the word ELSI, acronym ELSI, which is ethical, legal, and social implications. Some of the ethical implications include consent, privacy, and equity, while the legal implications include data ownership, intellectual property rights, and enforcement. And while the social implications include trust, stigma, and community impacts. I would like to catch your attention to the fact that genomics research is highly identifying or has relational attributes to it, and that's why this study is going to focus on the ethical, social, and legal implications. While all data is important, genomic research is important because of that. At the global level, because of the advancement in AI, there's a lot of research going on, and this is genomics research, and we know that funders or journals demand that genomic sequences be deposited on repositories. And this is going on, and while it's very good, it is not without ethical, social, and legal implications. Genomics research in sub-Saharan Africa remains at the infancy stage, despite the lot of research that is going on. It's key to know that the ethical regulatory frameworks for genomics research remain largely absent or outdated, and this is at different country-specific level. So many of the studies that have been done show that many of the researchers from non-middle-income countries are hesitant to share genomic data, and some of the reasons have been attributed to inequity in the sharing of genomic research. So Uganda was selected particularly as a case study because it hosts several genomic studies. Some of them are cancer-related, HIV-related, and Malaria-related. Uganda has recently had reforms, regulatory reforms like the Data Protection Act. These are recent UNCST guidelines on research involving participants, and that's why it was key to look at Uganda. So then what is the problem? So several policies have been developed. Many of them are not context specific to the low and middle income country context. So while UNCST has providing clarity around data ownership, there still remains a gap. And one of the gap being the fact that there is weak enforcement. UNCST requests for data sharing agreements to be used in collaborative relationships. However, enforcement mechanisms remain silent. The governments or the policies or the parliament is silent when it comes to the use of data sharing agreements in collaborative research. We do not have benefit sharing framework, which limits enforcement as well, and there are risks involved in collaboration. Some of these are power asymmetries that could put researchers from low and middle-income countries as well as the research participants at risk of exploitation. It's not clear what the interests or the views and perspectives of researchers involved in the sharing of genomics research are. So we conducted this study to find out what the views are and to be able to contribute to equity in the sharing of genomics research. There is no clear guidance regarding the sharing of genomics research in Uganda. So there is need to develop context-specific guidelines on the sharing of genomics research. So the research questions, the main question is, how is the regulation of data sharing and collaborative research done? Sorry, how is the regulation of data sharing and collaborative human genomic research done? Specifically, we sought to answer what is the context of data sharing and collaborative human genomic research in low and middle income countries, and what are the ethical, legal, and social implications of data sharing and genomic collaborative research? What is the ethical regulatory framework governing data sharing of genomic research in Uganda? So these are the objectives that are laid out. The main objective being to examine and evaluate the LC of data sharing in international collaborative genomic research from a regulatory standpoint, and the first objective which will be presented. So these objectives will be presented as sub-studies, and I have 4 sub-studies. The first one is to investigate the context of data sharing and collaborative human genomic research in low and middle income countries, to establish stakeholder awareness, attitudes, and practices on the sharing of genomic data in collaborative research in Uganda, to evaluate the ethical regulatory framework guiding data sharing at the institutional level in Uganda, and to develop a guidance paper for the sharing of genomic data in low and middle income countries. So the next slide, we look at the theoretical underpinnings. So this study utilized 3 theories. with the general systems theory being the overarching theory. So the general systems theory provides a lens on how to look at the system as a whole. So the system guiding the sharing of genomics data. The sharing of genomics data does not happen in a vacuum, but it is guided by the different processes, the different actors, some of the actors being stakeholders who are inclusive of researchers, research participants, community advisory board members, members of the research ethics committee members, as well as regulators. So all these different players work together in ensuring the conduct or the sharing of genomics data. And if one doesn't work well, or if there's misalignment, then the whole system could fall. The study adopted another theory, which is the distributive justice theory, basically to look at aspects of equity, distributive justice with the lens of data ownership, data misuse, and access to data. This specifically questions the systems around, questions equity around the systems guiding the sharing of data. And principlism basically provides an ethical analysis of autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and fairness at the individual level. So all these different theories were critical in the analysis of the data and in the write-up of the findings, and they were utilized during the study. So this is my conceptual framework. There are independent factors, and under the independent factors, there are individual factors. And under the individual factors, we're looking at age, the relationship between a career level and one's gender, and whether there is a relationship between gender and the willingness to share data. So awareness of the different guidelines that are in play, attitudes towards the sharing of genomic data, and so what is key here is the contextual factors and the processes. I was interested in understanding the contextual factors, in looking at the different factors that are either explicit or implicit, that are either written down or not written down, but guide the sharing of genomics data. All this is influenced or directed by the power dynamics that are at different levels in the process of the sharing of genomics data. The outcome is data sharing, and the study was interested in knowing whether this sharing of data was streamlined, and how we're able to tell whether it was streamlined or not was looking at aspects of equity, beneficence, and a framework on benefit sharing. Important to note that with genomics research, like I had earlier on mentioned, has relational attributes to it, and this affects a decision to take part in a study. Does not only affect the participant, but has implications on the family as well as on the community that they are from. Community engagement is key, and community engagement should be done at all stakes or at all levels during the sharing of genomics data. So this is the overall methodology that the study utilized, and the design was a multi-study design, and the reason this design was selected is because they have 4 sub-studies. The 4 sub-studies all use different data collection methods. They had all different research questions, and the research questions were all aligned to the main research question that the study sought to answer. So just to remind you that I will be presenting the methods and the results of the different sub-studies as is. So for sub-study 1 was a systematic review of literature, and the big N was 2,061 articles, but we ended up remaining with 11 articles, 9 of which were qualitative papers, 1 a mixed method paper, and 1 a quantitative paper. So from the analysis of the different papers, the 11 papers that we looked at, this provided a key summary, a key understanding of the context of sharing genomics data. There was what came out really key factors around trust. So you realize that there are ethical concerns, there are legal concerns, there are facilitators such as trust in the system, as well as the processes, the infrastructure available that would facilitate the sharing of genomics data. Some of the barriers that were listed included mistrust, and mistrust came out really key, as well as a weak regulatory framework guiding the sharing of genomics data. So the findings demonstrate that there is an interplay between the ethical, legal, and social factors, and there is need to strengthen these. Like I mentioned earlier on, genomics research is based on trust, and trust in genomics research or in the sharing of genomics data is fundamental. So just to provide an update on the publications, so as a protocol was written and it was published, and then for the reports, this report was submitted to PLOS ONE Journal, and it was accepted for publication. So for sub-study 2, sub-study 2 is a mixed method arm of the study, and the study utilized a convergence mixed method design, and qualitative and quantitative data collection were conducted at the same time. Analysis for both arms of the study were done, the merging was done, and the interpretation was done at the point of results. So we looked at the results to see how the qualitative and the quantitative results spoke or aligned to one another. So for the qualitative arm, focus group discussions were conducted with participants who had an experience in genomic studies, and then key informant interviews were conducted with people who are knowledgeable in the field of genomics, and key informant interviews were conducted mostly with community representatives. The focus group discussions and the in-depth interviews were conducted in Uganda. The data was managed, analysis was done thematically, themes were developed, and this data was managed using NVivo 14. So now you realize that this study had several research stakeholders, and these research stakeholders were from several institutes. So some of them were from Makerere University and research affiliates, institutions that are listed there. Then I had respondents from legal institutions. I had respondents from research ethics committees that approve genomic studies. I had respondents from national regulatory institutions. And this slide is basically to catch your attention on the role of collaboration in the conduct of genomics research and the sharing of data. And so for the quantitative arm of the study, the hypothesis is that there is a significant difference in willingness to share genomic data in collaborative relationships by power asymmetries. We had a sample of 163. Cross-sectional design was used, questionnaire was designed, and it was evaluated. So for the analysis of the quantitative data, important to note is that for the attitudes, Likert scales were used. A Likert scale was used to gauge the participants' willingness to share data, and it was rated either strongly agree, or disagree at the bivariate level. Pearson, chi-square, and Fisher's exact test was used, and at the regression model, or binomial regression was used because the outcome was a rare one. It was a rare one. So these are the demographics of the participants who took part in the qualitative arm of the study. You realize there were several of them, inclusive of both male and female. And for the focus group discussions, we had 4 focus group discussions with 39 participants. So willingness to share data was looked at under unconditional willingness. There was reported unconditional willingness, and this unconditional willingness was associated or was linked to altruism, autonomy, and the benefits that would come from the sharing of data. And like I mentioned earlier on, all the 3 theories were critical in the analysis of this data. Those who noted, some of the participants noted willingness, but with conditions. And it was basically noted to the fact that they needed this data to be shared with trusted people, or there should be an embargo period, or after the embargo period had expired. However, the hesitancy was mainly attributed to the fact that there were ethical concerns, concerns around commercialization of the data, fear of exploitation came out really strongly. So this particular text that we are seeing here is from the focus group discussions and the community advisory board, and they mainly highlighted the social implications, the social factors. What came out really key is they expressed fear and stigma. They were concerned about how the sharing of data could discourage them, could cause them to get into depression if their results were known by other people. So this quote here is from one of the members of the Community Advisory Board members, and they stated that the community members are superstitious, and this is in line with the genomic samples that were taken off. So the community members are superstitious about hair, about nails, and they perceive them as accessories of witchcraft. So what about sharing genetic data? The researchers have to help the community first get rid of the cultural bias that they may have. This is in line with community engagement. So still summarizing the 4 focus group discussions, there was conditional to high willingness in the first group. So in the second group, there was mainly high willingness to share data. And this was because these were mainly the parents of the children who are initially young at the point of time, and their main attribution or their drive to share data was linked to the fact that sharing of data could help future generations and be used in the development of products, of treatments and vaccines. However, the key concerns that come up was the risk of data misuse, lack of clear consenting processes, and the fact that since this data is shared with people who do not have an understanding of the community, there could be some misrepresentation or misinterpretation of the context from which data was shared. So this pie chart here shows that willingness to share data from the quantitative arm of the study was quite high. It was 86.5. So while it shows high willingness to share data, I want to pick your mind on the fact that there's still high ethical concerns related to the sharing of data, one of them being the risk of re-identifiability. That came out really key in all aspects of this study. So this is the bivariate and the multivariate table, and you realize that several of the factors were significant. For age, we realize that age is significant, and with every increasing year comes along with a 1% increase in willingness to share genomics data. So at the PhD level, so looking at the level of education, people with or researchers with a PhD level were less likely to share genomic data, and there were 3% less likely to share genomic data. So I would like to catch your attention here as well on the institution and the fact that researchers from Makerere University were less likely to share data compared to researchers from other institutions, and this was answered. So our qualitative findings helped us to answer this, and this was mainly related to the fact that Makerere University is a hub of genomic studies, and the researchers at Makerere University could have experience in managing of collaborations as well as in setting terms when it comes to sharing of data. Those who had been involved in at an institution also demonstrated willingness to share data. So looking at this table, so this table looks at the ethical, social, and legal tensions in the sharing of genomics data. I will not talk about all of them. I will highlight just a few. So when we look at the ethical concerns, I'll speak about informed consent. So from the focus group discussions, what came out really strong was the fact that most of the participants did not seem aware that their data was shared or was going to be shared globally, and they had concerns about the implications of what could come out from the sharing of the data. One other thing that came out really strong was the aspect of commercialization of this data. And in one of the quotes that we will look at, there are questions around whether the commercialization of this shared data is actually an ethical. Ethical imperialism is something that came out really strong. Ethical imperialism is a culture, is a system where a process where a culture is imposed by other parties. In this situation, it could be the researchers from the global north imposing a culture of data sharing on the researchers from the global south. And there were concerns around this. There were mixed views around whether data sharing is a form of ethical imperialism, with some of the participants thinking it wasn't a form of ethical imperialism. So the legal concerns that came out was lack of clarity around the share of the data and absence of sharing. So this slide still is to pick your mind around how the use of AI has increased or enabled the risk of re-identifiability. So this particular picture that you see here is to demonstrate to you that with AI using different different components. So now here a principal component analysis was used, and in using principal component analysis, the people who conducted this study were able to link the different participants were able to link them to the race even without having their demographics. It is something that is rising, and just in this quote, one of the participants noted, with artificial intelligence, anything is possible, because AI can use any kind of data and it can be traced back to an individual, even when you de-identify. So this goes back to the fact that genomic data is highly identifying, and there are concerns and questions around whether it can actually be totally de-identified. Recently, there was an aspect of a hack in one of the databases repositories, and that was in the UK Biobank. And so I'd like to pick your mind on the fact that if that can happen in a UK Biobank, then what happens in situations of low and middle income countries? So how do we respect the autonomy when future uses of AI are unpredictable? That's just to catch you thinking about that. Now, here are sample quotes, and this is one of the quotes that I was alluding to, and it states that it just feels morally wrong to sell the data because it was given free of charge. And now this is in regard to ethical imperialism. And this particular rec member was saying, I don't think data sharing is a form of ethical imperialism. Those are individuals who position themselves as if they're being colonized again. You have to be strong. This is your data, but our peers in Uganda are not very strong. They have to know who is taking our data and for what purpose, which protocol. So this is in regard to the negotiation skills. One of the things that came out really strong was the aspect of compromise by the different stakeholders and at different levels in the process of the sharing of genomic data. So for sub-study 2, what is really key, what has come out really strong, is that commercialization, in the absence of equitable frameworks, will bring about inequities and reinforce issues of distributive injustice. So it's key for us to think about how these different benefits that arise from the sharing of data can be distributed fairly in the absence of a framework that could guide the sharing of genomics data. And still important to note that there was high and low willingness to share data, and resonating with the principle of distributive justice theory, it sheds light on how communities perceive fairness, and their fairness is basically shaped by the trust that they have built on the researchers that they are working with. And still, it's important to note that the general systems theory provides a layer or a lens around the sharing of genomics data. So the publications from this study, I have 3 publications that were derived directly from this study, and I still have one I have another publication that focused on decolonizing genomic data ownership and sovereignty, and this publication, this manuscript has been accepted for publication in BMC Medical Ethics. Okay, so sub-study 3. So for sub-study 3 involved review of the data sharing agreements at 3 institutions. And this particular slide is to catch your mind on the different domains that were being looked out for. So in doing the content analysis or in conducting this review of the data sharing agreements, there were 5 key domains that the study sought to find out. So the aspect of data ownership, the aspect of data protection and security, data access, intellectual property rights, and benefit sharing. So we were 2 reviewers who went through the data sharing agreements that were given to us, and these data sharing agreements were data sharing agreements of genomic studies, and was specifically looking out for statements on either data ownership or statements on access. And the next slide shows that I will go straight to the aspects of benefit sharing, that in the 3 institutions, the 3 institutions all did not have anything listed down on benefit sharing, and that is to catch your mind that this could be not forgetting that the ground is not leveled, and the development of some of these benefits sharing agreements, data sharing agreements, is not done by the researchers, or even if the researchers do them, they may not have the required skill set to develop or to be able to bargain. Now, when we look at intellectual property, still there is a gap. Institution 2-1C did not have statements on intellectual property. So for this particular sub-study, to be able to bring context to what we had reviewed in the data sharing agreements, we looked at the interviews as well, just to find out how the findings from the data sharing agreements spoke to what came out from the interviews. So what came out really strong from the interviews was the fact that informed consent still is not informed. There were concerns around the informed consent processes. It appeared that it was more of just a checklist. Researchers just aimed at getting done with the process of consent, and not forgetting that this is genomics research, which has terms that are complicated, and making it hard for the lay person to understand what exactly was entailed in the sharing of genomics data. What came out really strong was the aspect of community harms, and the fact that they were raised concerns about reputational harm that could come from the sharing of genomics data. Legal enforceability still came out really strong, and this is in line with the disconnect between the legal policies and the practical implementation. While the UNCST asks for data sharing agreements to be used in collaborative relationships, the research ethics committees ask for them, but there is no process thereafter. So there is a disconnect between the policies and what actually is on ground. So for the discussion from the sub-study, there is need to strengthen statements. So the absence of statements on benefit sharing could be a fertile ground for exploitation. And what this means in practice could be that researchers from low and middle income countries do not have the required skill set to bargain well during discussions around the development of some of these data sharing agreements, and this could be, of course, cause for exploitation. So while all the institutions had data sharing agreements, it is key to see how best we can strengthen governance at the different institutions that conduct or share genomics data. So an update on this, on the publications from this sub-study is I submitted this manuscript to the Discover Health Public Health, and it was accepted for publication. So for sub-study 4, just to take us back, that we have been talking about the 3 different sub-studies, and sub-study 4 was developed following the guidance of, following a review of literature and the recommendations from the 3 sub-studies. So the systematic review, as well as the document review, as well as the primary data collection that involved the survey, interviews with the stakeholders. So the recommendations that were made by the stakeholders were incorporated into the guidance document. So I will present the guidance, components of the guidance document to you in the next slide. So the guidance document. So these are some of the aspects that we should consider during the sharing of genomics data. One being informed consent. It should be simple, it should be context specific, and it should be continuous. We should take note of how to prevent the risk of re-identifiability for participants who took part in the study. And community engagement should be ongoing at different levels or different layers of the process of the sharing data. There is need to strengthen the capacity of all stakeholders involved in the sharing of genomics data. And there is need as well to empower the different stakeholders, inclusive of researchers, research ethics committee members, who are involved in the landscape of sharing data. It's important for us to look at the aspects of benefit sharing, intellectual property, and important to notice the aspect of accountability. While we are pushing, the study is pushing for regulation, I guess what we need to think about is how do we strike a balance in ensuring that while we regulate, we don't over-regulate to avoid stifling research. So what came out really key around data ownership is the fact that several of the stakeholders advocated for co-ownership models. Return of results is something that we need to think about as we share data, and the need to strengthen the ethical regulatory frameworks that guide the sharing of data sharing. Regarding the data sharing agreements, it's key for us to have a minimum components that should be involved in the data sharing agreements, as well as sovereignty. I think with sovereignty, we need to think about how we can be sovereign and ensure that we have sovereignty over the data that has been shared. And data protection, how can we protect the research participants' privacy in an era of AI? So my contribution to the field of bioethics, I'm glad to say that I make 4 contributions to the field of bioethics. One is the fact that this study provides an evidence base for genomic data governance gaps in Uganda. So this study still demonstrates that bioethic frameworks developed in high-income countries may not be context-specific to low and middle-income countries, and there is need to develop frameworks that are suitable for low and middle-income country settings. And it also stresses the fact that it establishes that benefit sharing is a central bioethics norm, and it's important to think about discussions around benefit sharing. And finally, the 4th contribution is the development of the guidance document, which we will look at briefly as well. So what are some of the characteristics of the guidance document? Are the fact that it's a practical guidance checklist that will be used by all stakeholders involved in the sharing of genomics data. It is context specific. It was developed with Uganda as a case study, and the plan is to roll it out in low and middle income countries to see how that works. It is stakeholder informed, and this is basically on the recommendations from the different stakeholders. And why it matters? It matters because it will push for equity in the sharing of genomic data in collaborative relationships. It will support all stakeholders in the landscape. It standardizes data sharing. And like I mentioned earlier on, those are the target users. So some of the integrative insights that arise from the sub-studies is the fact that there was variation on the views of data ownership. Most of the participants from the focus group discussions kept thinking that the data belongs either to the researcher who asked them to join the study. Some of them thought the data belonged to them, but it was really clear that there were also aspects of researchers thinking the data belonged to them, and there were also, especially still the research participants thought the data belonged to the donors, to the funders who had funded the study. Ethical, legal, and social tensions cut across the different sub-studies, and it is key for us to think about how to address the ethical, legal, and social tensions that arise from the sharing of genomics data. There's a governance gap. This was highlighted especially from the systematic review, as well as in the different sub-studies, and the power asymmetries persist. So these power asymmetries are not only between researchers from the low and middle income countries and high income countries, but important to note, or I'd like to catch your attention on the fact that many times power asymmetries exist between research participants and the researchers. The ground is not leveled, and many times they are not able to speak on issues regarding their views on the sharing of genomics data. So there is need for structured guidance, and this cut across all the sub-studies. So recommendations regarding education and training: researchers from the Global South should strengthen their capacities and become eco-partners in genomic data sharing. One of the things that came out really strong is the fact that researchers should stop being just at the receiving end, and we should become involved in the writing of grants and participate effectively if we are to contribute to the decisions around the sharing of genomics data. Institutions should ensure interconnectedness among all the components that guide the sharing of the genomics data, and all the data sharing agreements should align to a common minimum standard to ensure consistency on how genomics data should be shared and protected. And then still there is need to involve multiple actors in the contracts processes, such as research governance offices, legal counsel, ethics representatives, and data management units. So by involving all these different stakeholders, it became clear that they all had a role to play in the processes guiding the sharing of genomics data. There is need to adopt a participatory approach in policy development by engaging researchers, ethicists, and community representatives in the process. And still the policy recommendations: it's essential to develop new ethical regulatory frameworks and strengthen the existing ones to be able to promote equitable partnerships. Enforcement, it's like I had mentioned, I kept mentioning, should be strengthened, and there should be mechanisms to be able to track where the data has gone, how it has gone, and who has access to it. And still we need to prioritize privacy, informed consent, and fairness, and policies should be developed to ensure equitable distribution of benefits. This will be facilitated by having dialogue discussions with key stakeholders, and it will help prevent data misuse. So this study, the strength of this study include the fact that this study began with a systematic review that laid ground for what has been done regarding genomics research and collaborative relationships. It was really key in helping us understand the gaps, what has been done still, and contributing to the gap, the knowledge gap. This study is innovative because it is context specific. It entails recommendations from different stakeholders, as well as it provides context-specific exploration of the LC around the sharing of genomics data. So evaluating the current regulatory framework helped us to suggest ways on how to strengthen the systems that guide the sharing of genomic data sharing. And important to notice the fact that it ends with the development of a locally grounded guidance document, which is valuable to stakeholders in Uganda and similar resource settings. Limitations. So the review focused mainly on qualitative studies, though we're able to include one quantitative study and one mixed method study. But these qualitative and in-depth exploration or understanding of the qualitative studies help provide context, very rich context on the sharing of genomics data. The survey as well was only done with researchers. It would have been interesting to know what the views of Research Ethics Committee was quantitatively. However, these researchers were from several institutions, which was key as well in getting their views on the sharing of genomics data. The study did not include voices of collaborators from the global north. Future research could look into this. So a key takeaway message is, can we change the narrative as researchers from the global south? I think the narrative has been for us to be on the receiving end, on the recipient end, but without changing that narrative and having bold discussions, we will continue to experience situations of power dynamics, power asymmetries, and this will continue to affect the way data is shared. The views will be affected in the process. So still institutions need to strengthen the capacities of their contract management functions. This will provide greater oversight and scrutiny during the sharing of genomics data, thereby promoting equity, fairness, and transparency, and protecting the interests of research participants and the communities that have provided the data. This work has been disseminated. I have disseminated this findings from this study at different conferences. I have an oral presentation scheduled for July in South Africa, and I have, like I said, been able to do both poster and oral presentations. I've also been engaged in public engagement and writing. I have contributed to different discussions from this work. And as a way of acknowledgement, I acknowledge all the people there. Those people right there in the middle are very special. As you can see, everyone on there is important. My supervisors are there, my sister, and all the people listed there have played a role, a key role in this work. Thank you so much for listening to me.
All right, thank you very much, Deborah, for sticking to time. And maybe starting where you are, I have the honor of introducing the supervisors. Ought to have done it before you started. But this work was, this great work presented to us was supervised by Professor Lisa Mwaka and Professor Chadondo, as well as Professor Shenuka Singhi. I've seen Professor David, I've seen Dr. Chadondo and Professor Mwaka around. I wonder if Professor Shenuka Singhi is on, but those were the supervisors for this important work. And at this moment, I would like to invite Professor Nanyu to take on the candidate. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kindly confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deborah. And thank you also to the organizers for inviting me to review this very important work that is very relevant to the work that we are doing as global researchers, working in the South-South collaborations, but also with our North collaborators. I want to start, Deborah, by first appreciating the work you've done, all your work for this PhD journey and the topic of your research. I appreciate that you picked something that is very relevant, and that is something, as you say, with the AI and all the technology that's coming up and the issues around genomic research, it's really important that we in the low middle income countries are better prepared. We make sure there's readiness for us to onboard this train that is involving a lot of genomic work. And there are implications in data sharing, among other things. Now, as recent as yesterday, a research team that is preparing to submit a proposal for funding discussed about depositing the data in Germany. And I remembered this work because I was reading about your work, and I found myself wondering about data sharing and access for the Kenyans and other team members who will be in Kenya when the data is deposited in a very nice, safe and fancy depository, you name it, abroad. But these are reality. These are real things happening, and these are grants we are writing in at the moment. So it's very important to address this issue. So thank you very much. I just want to start by flagging the fact that data sharing, like I said, is essential given our interest in advancing medicine. Especially, there's been a lot of talk about precision medicine that is really seen as groundbreaking and can make a big difference, especially with some of the chronic diseases we see across the globe and closer home in our African continent. But we need to balance these commendable efforts towards this open science where we say, oh yeah, the data, I'll put it up there. A lot of journal editors, they pause when you say you want to hold data back. So it's becoming the big thing to share our data. But as you say, the LC, these ethical, legal, and social implications stay in place. And we can't wish them away or push them under the carpet. So we need to reflect on all the available frameworks that promote our responsible data sharing, while at the same time ensuring we who are in the LMIC maximize the benefits associated with these types of collaborations. So I want to ask you a few questions to ascertain that you did the work and that you also understand it fully, because this is a PhD. I see a PhD, it's your baby. It's very special to the person being awarded. So I see a PhD representing the individual's scientific journey, their growth, and the innovations they're bringing to the world. And we always say if there is no additional dot to the knowledge that we already have on that topic, then there was no science to it. And so I appreciate the efforts you've made to make sure you added a dot, a big dot to the knowledge that we have. So in layman's language, can you tell us what your study is all about? Imagine you're in the marketplace in Kampala. Tell us your study topic and what made you address it. Let's start at the beginning. Just a few sentences. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. So my study is about, so in a layman's language, how, say, the traits that we get from our parents are passed on to say the children that we have. So it is what we get from our parents and how they are passed on to the children. So now that is in regard to what we get from our parents. So now we're trying to talk about the sharing of data. So I'll tell them that one, there are some genes, or there's something you get from your father, and there is something that you get from your mother. And when you bring that together, that is now your genomic data, and this genomic data is going to be shared globally. So my study is looking at how sharing of that data can affect an individual socially, can affect them, can affect the community that they are coming from. I would say that in a layman language.
Yeah, this is extremely important to me because I have a question for you about dissemination. You had a very nice slide on your dissemination and also in your thesis, but I'm a little concerned that particular category of Ugandans, there is no plan that I have seen about how you want your work to be shared and known. But thank you for that, because it's important to have an elevator pitch about your work, and it should always be something that an undergraduate, even someone in class 6 primary, can follow and understand what you're doing. And I totally think your work is important, so there's no question about that. Now, when you did your PhD work, and when I'm confused about when you began your own work and what is collaborative work that you have done with your colleagues. I looked at your publications, I looked at the way you have presented this, and I expressed a lot of confusion. This is what I call a chicken egg situation that needs clarity so that we can confirm how deeply your own work runs within the broader collaborative initiative where you were working with a team. As I've said, a PhD needs to be, it's identified with an individual for the work they have done. So what scholarly aspects of this thesis submission and what you have shared with us today are actually your own work for this PhD award? How do you differentiate that from the work you have done with other people? I think I'll pause there for now. Over.
Thank you, Professor. So all the work that I have presented is directly from my PhD work. I think the confusion in the thesis could have come from the fact that at some point I kept saying this is a build on. I referred to it as a build on because I had done similar work. So from the first publication that had gone out, then to the second one. So every time I had a new publication, I called it a build on, but all the work I have done is directly from my PhD work. All the work that has been published, all the work that I have said has been submitted is directly from my PhD work. In the thesis, I included work that I have done during the time of my PhD, but I did not include it under work that has been included for my PhD work. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does. Sorry, 1 minute. So I'm in class. Okay. So thank you for that clarity, because you need to be very intentional about expressing that. Because right now, in fact, most of the grants we are writing, we're encouraging PIs to include master's students, PhD students, and postdocs. And we usually will hive off sectional parts of that work and show how the other team members are mentoring or are supervising and guiding the fellow, and the work is their own. So your work, the way I received it and understood it, was confusing me. I couldn't lift that, and it needs to be very clear. Thank you for clarity. And again, we are very proud of what you have done. Now, going to the introduction you've given, thank you for having the multi-layered intro that had global levels all the way to Uganda. Now, within Uganda, when I was reading your work and listening to you today, you alluded to existing Ugandan policy guidelines that would be useful. And you talked about, an open data policy, a Data Protection and Privacy Act, and all that. But it was not clear to me where research was. I kept looking for where you will say, this is what is going on with research. But I noticed today you have talked about a revised national guideline for research. So can I ask, because we want to know what the gaps are, right, in policy and guidelines within the nation. So we need to have a complete understanding of what is there and where it may be data for health and other issues, but not necessarily for research or specifically for genomic research. So can you share more on the currently revised national guideline for research? What does it say about data sharing, collaborative research, but more so about our interest right now about genomic research? Over.
Thank you, Prof, for those questions, and apologies for the lack of clarity still in the thesis. So for the Data Protection Act, the Data Protection Act allows for data to be shared, and the Data Protection Act is supposed to be used by all Ugandans. It's supposed to provide a layer of protection of the privacy of the data that has been shared. However, the challenge with the Data Protection Act is the fact that it's not a health-related act, and it doesn't provide a clear guidance on the sharing of genomics research or genomics data. The open data open data policy, I alluded to that open data policy because it was drafted in 2017, and up to today, it is still in draft form. So it cannot be used for enforcement because it is still in draft form. If it had been passed, it would be useful in providing guidance on the sharing of data as well. So the revised guidelines, so the Uganda Council, National Council for Science and Technology, had guidelines, came up with guidelines in 2014, and now there are revised guidelines that provide guidance on research participants and handling research. So while the guidelines are really key because they speak a lot, they allude a lot to the fact that collaboration is key. Collaboration is key. They leave the onus of, say, management of the power dynamics to the researchers. They talk about the aspect of, they provide clarity on the aspect of data ownership, but still the guidelines state that this ownership should be discussed or negotiated with the partners, say the researcher and the collaborator who they are dealing with, which still lays a gap for exploitation. Then the other thing that they place emphasis on is on samples. The emphasis is mainly on genomic samples, how they should be used, how they should be tracked, especially with the use of material transfer agreements. But when it comes to data sharing agreements, little is said, and still that creates the gap and the need for enforcement. There is nothing really said about how to ensure that the data that has been shared is tracked, or ways in which to ensure that this data is protected, and so that still leads us to a gap and calls for additional mechanisms on enforcement.
Thank you very much. I think 17 here, we are in 2026, and you're winding down your thesis. Maybe even though you have done your scoping reviews and the lit review and all that, as you're doing the tail end, it would be good to even check in and just see where things are at. And definitely your work is going to add a lot of value to the guidelines and even the policy landscape in Uganda. And for us, we will be following suit, seeing some of the lessons you have garnered. Thank you very much. Now, if I can shift gears a bit and go towards your methods. First, I want to highly commend you for thinking about a mixed method study that includes quite a number of institutions and steps all the way from desk reviews to in-person primary data collection, and then ending up with actually an outcome, an output, something that can be used to improve policy and practice. I highly commend you for that. So now your work is a research that has, sometimes you talk about 3 sub-studies, then sometimes you're talking about 4. So you talk about having 4 specific objectives, but so at some point when I look at the work, I expect to see a title that fully aligns with the specific objectives, and then the specific objectives fully align with the methods that follow, so that I make sure in my methodology I have the population of study, the sampling technique, the methods for data collection and analysis for it to ensure each of the specific objectives are addressed. So there's a bit of, I get lost now and then, because when you sometimes say, here is a summary of the sub-studies and the objectives, you leave out number 4, the specific objective 4, the one to develop a guidance paper for the sharing of the genomic paper. So you need to be, I think, fully aligned from the word go. So this is a comment, and I don't know, maybe I pause, maybe there's something I'm missing from the way you've done it, or I didn't understand it. But make sure if you have 4 specific objectives, you keep going with them all the way to the tail end, even when you're doing the reporting of the findings, the discussion, and how you're concluding. So I don't know whether you want to react to that, because it's losing me a bit. And I saw even in your slides, you talked now about 4 sub-studies. But in the bigger, this is when you write it, you talk about 4 specific objectives, then you go into 3 sub-studies, and we get lost.
I apologize for that lack of clarity, but there are 4 sub-studies, and I think the lack of clarity comes from the fact that the 3 sub-studies were directly filling into the 4th sub-study. So the fourth sub-study was directly birthed from the 3 sub-studies. So from the systematic review, from the document review, from the qualitative arm of the study, as well as the survey. So the recommendations from those 3 different sub-studies are what filled into the 4th sub-study. So I guess that's where the overlap came from. But I had 4 sub-studies that were answering the question on how the regulation of genomics data should be done. So I apologize for that lack of clarity.
Yeah. Remember, the other key thing about how we report on our master's and PhD thesis and any other research work, you want your work to be repeatable by any other global scholar. So making sure that the methods chapter, which is the heart, the heartbeat of the scientific work you're doing, for people to be able to unpack and see and analyze and follow up this kind of, detailed deliverable of the methodology steps is really, really important, and to match that. And that also touches on the conceptual framework. I have a framework in the picture that doesn't have some variables that are discussed in the prose. And so I'm left wondering, okay, is this figure representing everything that is, usually we say in research, the figure should be almost a standalone document, image. It should be able to speak on its own before even someone opens their mouth. I'll give you an example. You talk about relational factors that are very important, like trust, collaboration, and communication, and they are critical when we think about sharing genomic data. And you also talk about individual level data points, yeah? You talked about age, I think gender, and they're also crucial when we're thinking about this. But when you look at the visuals that you end up having for your work, these are things that are not intentionally captured. So that is something, make sure there is that alignment fully 100% between what ends up being the figure for your project, which is emanating from all the conceptual frameworks that are informing your work, but make sure they carry all the variables or domains of interest to your own work fully. So when I think about the study design, I have a few questions that come up. First of all, the use of a series of sub-studies, okay, it's not common in my institution. So this one, I want to say, I'm aware, I have had fellows in other institutions in the North where they've had a series of sub-studies and they have amounted to it becoming their PhD. So I'm just expressing my, not ignorance, but my lack of experience working with this kind of setting. So the most important thing to me, what matters is in the end that you make sure all the series of sub-studies are speaking to the specific objective fully, like we have just said. But when it comes to the sampling now, again, I had to keep going back to each sub-study to make sure that what are the characteristics of the population of study? How are they being sampled? How are they meeting the specific objectives that are alluded to? So my first question, can you describe to us the characteristics of the members of your CAB? The community advisory board members that you engaged in your study, I was left with a question mark.
Thank you, Prof. And still, again, apologies for that confusion that you had to go through while you were reading the thesis. So the members of the CAB were directly sampled from genomics studies. So the different institutions that conduct genomic studies had community advisory boards. So it's from those community advisory boards that were attached or affiliated to the research institutions that conduct genomic studies. So it's from that particular part that I was able to approach them purposively and speak to some of them to find out if they were willing to take part in the study. So I purposively went to the institutions, found out about the CABs. I got a list of the CAB members and then contacted the CAB members to see if they were willing to take part in the study. So it was based on purposive sampling.
So do you know the characteristics of the members you interviewed? And this is going to build onto a question I'll have about characteristics of your study participants, because your work would really benefit from having a table that captures that. CABs have all kinds of representations to capture, and they're quite often aligned also to the specific projects that are happening and things like that. So just tell this audience some of the key characteristics of the people from the CABs that you selected, that you interviewed. I'm also very curious whether any of them represented like a patient population.
Okay, thank you. So in the presentation that I made today, I actually provided the overview of the demographics of the CAB members. So some of them had, I think 2 of them had a master's level degree. So there were 9 CAB members, 2 of them had a master's level degree. 7 of them had a bachelor's degree, and then the remaining ones had diplomas. Most of them, some of them represented an HIV population. Some of them represented men's group. Some of them represented, say, the community at large, because this was like a representation of, say, someone from, say, from the media, someone. So there was a mix of those, the people that I interacted with. And I think one of them as well represented, was a woman representative. So there was just a mix of all of them. When I was going to speak to them, I didn't really think about that, but it was during the analysis that I noticed, oh, okay, so they represent different groups. But still, what came out from the discussions that I had with them was the fact that they being selected as a member of the CAB was based on, say, given, say, characteristics. One, you had to have contact with the community, you had to be considered a community person, and then education while education was considered important, they just wanted to know that someone can be able to communicate well with the community, but there was no standard of, say, you must have a degree or a master's degree. The interest was to have someone who could represent the views of the community. So thinking about that, there was a mix of the different communities that they represent.
Yeah, it's really important to bring that out, because that's what we call the John and Mary part, because it was very easily clear to me who the researchers, regulators, and participants were. So the CAB was not strong enough. Thank you for that. Now, building on that, you talk about saturation. So you had the researchers, the regulators, the participants, and the numbers that you had, and you talk about saturation being applied and stopping when additional data was no longer needed. What steps did you take in this particular PhD journey to check for saturation and to determine that it's time to stop recruitment for any of the categories? Over.
Okay, thank you for that question, Prof. So to be able to check for saturation, so one, the first guiding decision was from the fact that I had different categories of participants, and following on Creswell's recommendations, Creswell says that if you have different categories of participants, 5 or less are ideal. So the fact that I had different institutions, so like I have just displayed them, some of them were research institutions, some were research ethics committees, some were regulatory, some of them were legal institutions. I used the institutions one as a guiding factor, like say, for example, for the researchers, my target was 15 to be able to enroll 15 researchers, and this was across. So the driving force was to have the 15 researchers from the given research institutions, Makerere University and the research affiliate institutions. So that was one. So saturation was first based on at the institutional level, and then so I also kept doing analysis and data collection at the same time. So I would conduct every after I concluded, say, data collection of a focus group discussion or an interview, I went back and did preliminary analysis. So I conducted preliminary analysis to kind of get a feel of what the data was saying, what the data looked like. I did not have to wait till the end of conduct of all the interviews, but I did it. It was an interactive process. I kept doing the analysis, listening in. I attended all the interviews, most of them, and then that helped me get a feel of what was coming up. So when I did the preliminary analysis, that helped me know whether there were new codes coming up, whether there were new themes coming up. So that was still guided. That guided the decision to stop. The fact that I had to do a preliminary analysis, and it guided the decision to stop. I also had meetings team meetings to be able to deliberate with the members of the team to find out if there were any new codes that were coming up, and if there was need for us to stop conducting data as well as analysis, given what was coming up
this is really important.
From the data.
This detail you've given us here is so rich and valuable, and it's all right. It's a perfect way to do it, but the story is not there. So this needs to come out very strongly. Remember, when someone uses your work, they should be able to use it to inform another project. So details would really help. And then also details about the sub-study 4. Yes, it's true, it's informed by the first 3, but there's this development of a locally grounded, guidance paper, as we are calling it. But there needs to be, the same way you did a methodology for each of the sub-studies, this sub-study is left sort of hanging. I found myself asking exactly what was done, where, how long, how often, which tools, how was that data managed around that workshop or whatever they're doing to refine and come up to the agreement. This is what the guidance paper is. That part also requires details as much as you have done, like the example you've just given. And now, as I'm about to shift gears, were there any participants who were engaged more than once? Again, this is not very clear from your methodology, but it's alluded to in several places. So it needs, maybe someone was in sub-study this, then they were involved in sub-study 4, especially now that sub-study 4 builds off of many others. So I think that needs to come out very, 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 very clearly. So allow me to ask a few questions about your data analysis. I find your data very rich and very valuable. And I like the way as you analyze it, you go back to your 3 guiding theories and you try to see where some of these codes and subcodes are fitting. But as I was reading, I kept feeling like so much of your work, the way you analyze it and then report it in the results is piecemeal. You've maintained these sub-study silos too long, to the point that I have to keep looking to see what is cross-cutting and things like that. While you allude to triangulation in the methodology, when I come to the results, the triangulation is not being seen. It's piecemeal, and it makes it very hard to see the flow. All right, so if you can do further analysis beyond the heavy use of transcripts from one subsection to report on the issue, if you could have a way where the segmented presentations are sort of synthesized, you're actually, in the end, your final report will not be unnecessarily long, and you will draw out that lack of flow. So I don't know that you can consider that, but there's so much of the silo to the point that at the end, I'm left wondering, you triangulated in the analysis, in describing the analysis, but when I came to where I'm looking for the findings, I'm not seeing it. All right. And even also having an illustrative quote per thematic area as appropriate. I found that there were some sections you talked about the thematic area, it was so rich and all that, and I was wishing for a quote, but there wasn't. Then I would find in another place. Maybe I can let you react to that before I talk about the results.
Once again, Prof, apologies for that. And about the piecemeal analysis, I actually did analysis by stakeholder category, where I looked at, so what I did is I looked at the different categories of the stakeholders. So say like the researchers, I analyzed the data alone, and then I made sense of that data coming out from the researcher categories. Then I went and looked at the data that was coming out from the research ethics committee members. Then I looked at the regulators. I put the research ethics committee members together with the data from the regulators. And then I looked at what was coming out from the members of the community advisory boards, and then I tried to put that, I made sense of that. So then I got all these different code books and put them together into one master code book, and the master code book had all the codes with all the data from the different categories, the lawyers. And so I began to focus on the different categories of the the different categories of the stakeholders. So like say, when I looked at the research participants and compared what was coming out with the members of the CABs, I noticed that there was a lot of sync, and especially in line with, say, the need for community engagement, the need source. That's why I presented that slide that focused on the social issues, because in many of the interviews, that seemed to come out a lot. And then when I looked at, so I began to compare the different categories of stakeholders and what was coming out, like say the issue of data ownership. And I kept looking at, say, what the researchers think of data ownership, what the regulators think of data ownership. And that's why I was able to, say, integrate that and see what is coming out. Then in regard to triangulation, so that's the point at which I now put all that information together. So in regard to triangulation, so for sub-study 3 that looked at the document review, I was aware that just looking at these documents, sorry.
Okay, I think, Deborah, the point I'm making is this. In your methodology chapter, you have explained the data integration triangulation steps, But when I come to the results section, the outputs from those triangulator sessions are maybe because this was on PPT, the summary was beginning to show them, but a lot of the data it's missing. So I don't know what happened, but you need to look into that. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
you need to also show how specific codes from the data differentiate by the types of participants, and if yes, is this worthy of further analysis? And then we are missing a table showing the characteristics of all study participants from all the sub-studies. That needs to be availed and should be clearly presented. All right?
Okay, I will include that table in the thesis.
Yeah. Then the other key thing that I wanted to mention is that as I read your work and as I listen to your presentation, I realized that you have raised a lot of interesting data using all the methods, from the desk review to the primary data. And all this has raised various bioethical topics. But you need to make sure that you focus on the title of your work. Yeah, there's a lot of good information. Yeah, but the thesis should be intentionally curated towards the topic, and the topic is focusing on genomic research and regulation of data and issues of sharing data. So there are times I read the work and I get lost. You're suddenly going into detail about benefit sharing, and other things. So you need to focus on that and then in the results chapter, you need to always give your results without interpreting. Those interpretations should go into the discussion. And any material that has to do, like what you are describing, the triangulation and all that, and all the other details about the methodology, like the Prisma flow and all that, should stay in the right place, not in the results, but actually in the methodology chapter. So I see our time is far gone. But let me see other highlights of things maybe we haven't mentioned. Yeah, I've talked about comparative analysis that are missing in detail. And again, you repeat a lot of the findings in reporting your discussion, but of course in the oral, I appreciate that you didn't necessarily do that, but you need to keep all the main findings in the main results section, and you highlight findings when you're discussing in the discussion section. Then in your conclusion, again, I kept feeling like when you're concluding again, you should go to the mother title of the thesis. Again, here, I started feeling like you had very good, I call it good to know, but it becomes a distractor. So you need to ensure that the study we talked about, it was aimed at comprehending the ethical, legal, social implications of genomic data sharing in a collaborative environment. That's what you need to carry throughout. Even when you're analyzing the good data, the good to know you keep there, but you need to keep going through with this in mind. What am I finding here about ELSI? What am I finding here about genomic data sharing? What am I finding here about collaborative research that has to do with genomic data sharing? That is lost here and there, all right? So I had talked about dissemination, and I'm curious, who else? You talk about disseminating to regulators, national regulators, and the Ministry of Health. Who else do you want to know about your findings within Uganda? Have I lost
Deborah,
everybody?
Deborah, are you there?
Oh, I thought I was the one who got lost.
I'm trying to hear. Boardroom, are you?
Sorry about that. We had a technical glitch here.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
you please turn on your video since you're online? Turn on your video again. Unless you have a technical issue there.
I'm going to turn on my video, Prof. I am just trying to share again.
But you have a question to answer from Professor Nani. She can recap.
Yeah, let me just wrap up to the one on dissemination. And I think we saw even on your PPT, I did not see a lot of mention about within country dissemination. And yet we're saying this is very valuable findings that would have implications on, what our communities think, what our patient population thinks, and other players like the civil society or community-based organizations that are really close to our people. So who else do you want to know your findings within
just
Uganda?
Give me a minute, please. Just give me a minute, please.
Oh.
All right, we migrate to the
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay, it happens.
I don't know what has happened, but I'm almost done, Chair.
It's okay.
But
Deborah, you okay? We hope.
I hope she's okay.
Yeah. Let's give her a minute.
Let's do that.
Deborah, are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay, Prof. I'm here.
Are you able to respond to Professor Nani, or she recaps for you?
Yeah, I can do a quick recap on maybe the question on dissemination, because I think we've touched on the others. Why is dissemination to a broader array of stakeholders not captured in your work? And here I'm heavily concerned about dissemination within Uganda to the different actors all the way to the grassroots. Over.
All right, thank you, Prof, for that question and observation. So one of the plans, so while I indicated, or while I have done a lot of dissemination at the international level, as well as at the local level, one of the plans is when I come back to Uganda is to have a stakeholder engagement meeting with so that different categories of the stakeholders, because I would like to take back the findings from this guidance document that I'm developing. So basically, I'm here to get an oversight of the data sharing policies, the data protection policies, and all these are going to fill into a sub-study 4. So the plan is to use the guidance or the experience that I have learned to fill into that. So one of the things I plan to do is to have a stakeholder engagement meeting with the different categories of the stakeholders who are involved in the study.
Yeah, and again, when you use the word stakeholder, it's very broad because it has everybody else. I was trying to flag a certain category of stakeholders that is definitely not mentioned in your work, and that would be nice. I'm glad to know you have that in mind so that you keep the issue of equity and reaching different people in societal strata, people who are working in research and may not mainstream researchers and things like that. Those CBOs and CSO can add a lot of value. Thank you for that. And consider different modes and means of sharing your work. Be more visual, especially at grassroots, maybe storytelling, an issue brief that is simplified, things like that. That would really add value because your work, like I've said, is it's unique in its own way, in the way you have done it. So we need to share it broadly. So allow me to just talk a bit about recommendation. I really do like what you've said, apart from two things. You talk about education and training towards our global north. Our southern But I think researchers from the global north should also strengthen their own skills, and bioethics capacity to engage as fair partners with us in the south. What's your opinion on that? Because you focus on the south, that we need to pull up our socks.
Thank you so much for that question. So the reason I focus on the South is because for a very long time, researchers from the South have been more on the will I say, receiving end. So we, as researchers from the South, have been more on the receiving end, waiting to get a grant, not taking part in a grant, and this affects the way in which discussions are held. So if I can just allude to one of the participants, one of the research ethics participants, who indicated that many times the reason the grounds are not leveled is because researchers from the global south just want to wait for a grant to be brought. But if there is a situation where you're involved right from the start in writing, applying for this grant, you're able to make terms, you're able to benefit, to negotiate well and say, I will not do this. Still, one of my participants alluded to the fact that when they are sharing this data, they are able to make terms and conditions. They will keep the metadata because they know in a situation where they need to share, people will still have to come back to them. But many times the researchers from the global south do not have the negotiation skills that are required to engage in a collaborative relationship, and this leads to compromise. And this is also linked to the fact that most of the times we researchers from the global
Sorry, Deborah. Deborah, allow me to, because of time, to interject. I'm not saying we should not be building capacity in the South. I'm asking, because you didn't mention it, whether we should also encourage the global North to strengthen their own collaborative research skills and bioethics capacity to be fair players in these collaborative platforms.
Okay, just to respond to that arm of the question, yes, it's important, and I think I'll need to include that for the collaborators from the global North to strengthen their skills. I have had experiences as well. There are times where I have had to speak out, and I guess that is because I am empowered in a way, and sometimes I have reflected and said, what would have happened? How different would this have been if we had a researcher from the global south in a similar situation that I am in, who is not in position to speak out? So that is a very important point that I would need to include in the thesis as well. Thank you for flagging that. Yes.
So I only had 2 comments about the recommendations, where you also were reflecting on researchers. You gave too many general recommendations that anyone can just list about any research. I think I want you again to keep remembering about the title of your work, the baby that you're carrying, that is known as Deborah's work. So all these are important ethical considerations, but when not discussed intentionally in the context of genomic research and associated data, they end up falling into that basket I'm calling good to know material, and are not necessarily, they become very distracting to the topic that you're working on. So again, just lift that which is, and emphasize that which is of greatest importance to the topic you have it, and what would affect policy and practice going forward. So I'm left wondering, what innovation is emerging from your findings? In a sentence, can you tell us?
The innovation that is emerging from my findings is one, the fact that I am contributing to the body of knowledge on the ethical, legal, and social implications on the sharing of genomics data, and the findings end with the development of a context-specific, locally grounded paper, which will be used as a checklist, not only by researchers.
I like that. Thank you. You've answered my question. Now, you have 4 policy points that you have flagged for us. If you were given a small award, which of these 4 do you feel, if you did something about to push that policy or that guideline, would truly inform the policy and practice gaps in your country and make the biggest difference if it was attended to?
Thank you so much. If I got a small grant, what I would do first is I would address the aspect of capacity building, because capacity building is an all-round aspect that affects researchers. It affects the capacity of research ethics committee members. We have research ethics committee members who are not empowered. We have regulators who are not empowered. We have CAB members who are not empowered. So just that grounding on genomics is considered difficult. Giving them those short courses would be helpful in the kind of information that comes down then to the community, in helping them understand how the sharing of data could affect them. So the first thing I would do would be the capacity building arm of it.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's, it's not about policy, it's about programming. But think about it, if you were, instead of working on 4 policy issues, you need to think about what can I deliver right away? Because instead of having a very big umbrella of so many good things, all right? Now, looking at what you have done in relation to your PhD, Deborah, what is your greatest pride and a highlight of your work?
Thank you so much for that question, Prof. So my greatest pride is the fact that I engaged with so many stakeholders, and these different stakeholders all were able to contribute meaningfully. They had a lived experience in the conduct of genomics research or in the sharing of genomics data. And for me, the recommendations from the different stakeholder categories are now fill into this guidance document, which is going to be used as a checklist, a go-to document, which anyone in the landscape of genomics data sharing will use, and this will push for equity. So it's around equity discussions, contributing to the discussions.
Looking back at your PhD journey, if you had an opportunity to do it all over again, what would you definitely do differently and why?
If I had the opportunity to do something differently, I guess, like I mentioned earlier on.
I can hear you. Sorry, I was a bit distracted.
Okay, so if I could do anything differently, I guess I would want to know what the numbers around data sharing are with the Research Ethics Committee members, and include that to the survey, because now I only have views of researchers, but it would be helpful to know that as well. I guess I would also broaden the views to hear from collaborators from the Global North, because now we are talking about them and the need for their capacities to be strengthened, but we do not have their voices into this. So that is the gap that I see. It would be helpful to have them included as participants, in this discussion that is going forward.
Okay. So my final question, what are your plans now that you have completed this PhD on this very important topic?
Thank you so much for that question. So I am looking for one, like you talked about grants, I am looking for funding to be able to take this guidance document to the next level, to be able to pilot it in different low and middle income countries, but also I'm looking for postdoctoral opportunities to be able to explore the views of stakeholders around the use of this guidance document.
Thank you very much, and good job. Very good. Over to you, Chair.
Wow, thanks very much, Professor Nanyu. That was super. A round of applause to you for that rigorous engagement with the candidate. It was also an opportunity to learn a few things. We really, really appreciate. Asante sana. Okay, now next, by the way, before we proceed to the other panelists, when we are distracted, you had a technical glitch, Deborah. You missed out a lot on important feedback from Professor Nanyu, and I guess this defense is recorded. You can have a recording and hear. She had very, very critical feedback, which you need regarding improving your thesis. But if the minute taker captured it, she will give it to you as well. Let's move on to the panelists now. We will have around 10 minutes each. We will start with Dr. Gerard Mbowa. I hope you are hearing me, Dr. Mbowa.
Yes, please. Thank you, Dean, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, Professor Nanyu, for interrogating Debbie about her work. Debbie, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Mbo.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you for taking this timely project that you took for your PhD. And it is something that, for myself, it is passionate to me, looking at how genomic research has been progressing in Africa for the last almost 15 years. And also trying to build on the work that was started majorly by H3 Africa in building genomic capacity in Africa. So your work interrogated aspects of genomic research and how it is expanding and how we have to rapidly catch up when it comes to the ethics and the legal aspects and the social implications of genomic research in Africa, and as well as the regulatory framework that are still evolving, even in the most developed world. I think genomic research is moving faster than the regulatory frameworks. So I think we are not so much behind. There is time to catch up, and maybe bringing that more background to your work is the fact that in Africa, a continent of maybe more than 1 billion individuals, we have not even sequenced
Sorry, I can't hear you very
150,000.
well. Sorry, Dr. Mbo,
Okay.
I can't hear you very well.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry about that. I was saying, even in the most developed world, I think they haven't sequenced more. They have sequenced a good number of the population, but not so much. But in Africa, where many of the low and middle income countries are based, we have not even sequenced more than 150,000 individuals to date. So I feel we are not so much behind if we try to make a case for building the capacity for the regulatory framework and governing the genomic research. And again, more importantly, the fact that you interviewed many of the stakeholders, and most importantly here, what I wanted to bring to your attention, the ethics committee. There are many scenarios where you realize the ethical committees are trying to regulate shipping of samples for sequencing outside Africa. And again, the challenge to that is because maybe they imagine we have the capacity in the country, and many of the countries in Africa have not built that capacity. So this endeavor will remain collaborative in the sense, and maybe as part of what Professor Nanyu has hinted on, you need to disseminate your work in these different stakeholders, especially the ethics committee that always want to cap shipping of samples for sequencing outside Africa. And they always say we have the capacity in the country, which is not true anyway. And we haven't reached a level where we can do whole human genome sequencing within our. If they are doing that, they haven't reached a level where we can ship these samples. I mean, where we can do this within our nation borders. So that is something that I feel you need to push forward when you are disseminating your results. Okay, let me go for the first question I wanted you to clarify on is regarding the argument that this data can always be, much as we clearly say, there is a risk of re-identification of genomic data when it comes to the component of data sharing. I would argue that in the true sense, genomic data should be treated as potentially identifiable by default. So that there are no scenarios where someone is going to say there is a risk of re-identification. No, we should potentially treat it as identifiable by default, so that we now make governance frameworks that should move away from promising complete anonymity to ensuring that we control how it can be accessed, shared, and then there's a process for accountability. And then for the questions, the question I wanted to ask you here is, let me see the best way to frame this question. So my first question is looking at the participants and the communities within which you delivered the interviews. I think they have already talked about the kind of the background, to present the background of the people who were interviewed for the interviews that you had for your work. So do you think this, if you are to go back and look at the pool of the people that you managed to interview for those different stakeholder groups, what percentage of these did you manage to interview? Because I know in some groups I was seeing 36, then some I would see maybe 12 that were interviewed. Meaning in some cases you had the number doubling in some of those groups. So do you think if you had to repeat this work today, you would end up increasing that number, or that was exhaustive? For example, if you reached out to say, I'm interviewing the members of the ethics committee, do you think you exhaustively interviewed the number that you targeted to interview, or that was less? First respond to that.
Thank you. Dr. Mboa, can you hear me?
Hello.
Can
Yes,
you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. I don't know if you got.
Yes, you can hear you.
Did you get my question?
Yes, I got your question. So in some scenarios, yes, now like in regard to the research ethics committee members, I will say there were scenarios where I contacted different members of the research ethics committee members, and what I noted was mostly say the chairs of the research ethics committee members indicated they were busy. So from the 14 that I had, a few of those were chairs, but I thought actually that sample size, the sample that we got, which was 14 of them, was ideal. Though it would be interesting to know and get additional views, I guess, from other categories of participants. I guess that would be helpful as well. So to respond to your question, there are scenarios where you'll notice that there were more participants because that given institution probably does a lot of work in genomics research, and they have so many participants involved in the conduct of genomics research compared to others, even when, regardless of the fact that they are all conducting genomics research. So I guess it would be nice to get, I guess, additional views from some of the categories, like say the regulators, because I think from there I got 9 of them. But the good thing is that say even these regulators were from different, the nice thing, or the thing I am proud of, the thing that I am proud of is the fact that these participants were from different research institutes, and I guess that's what brings a blend to this category of participants. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So the next question is regarding integration of the mixed methods for one of your publications that was looking at the systematic review and also the stakeholder-based mixed methods study. So can you clearly explain how these 3 components were integrated to produce a single coherent governance framework for your objective?
Dr. Mbo, I can't hear you very well, but I hope you can hear me.
Yeah. Did you hear? Yeah, I can hear you, but of course the connection is not so good.
My connection.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well now. So your question is regarding integration of the different.
Yeah, the question is the mixed methods to produce a single coherent governance framework. How was that done?
Thank you for that question. So I began with a systematic review, and following the guide, the evidence that I got from the systematic review, which was mainly tailored to ethical, legal, and social implications, as well as understanding the context and the practices that were lined up in regard to sharing of genomics data. That systematic review was very helpful in laying strategy or laying the ground on, say, for the conduct of the primary data collection. So the guidelines or the recommendations from the systematic review is what I used to get to know what was on the ground. And then like I mentioned earlier on, I conducted the survey and the interviews as well as the focus group discussions at the same time. So when I did the analysis, I put together the analysis from the survey, the interviews, and the focus group discussions, made sense out of them to see how the different arms of the study were speaking to each other. And then I conducted a document review to see what was coming out in regard to the documents. So like I mentioned earlier on, to make sense out of the documents that I reviewed, I had the interviews. So the interviews were helpful as a form of validation for me to get to know. So like the times I looked and saw, oh, there's nothing on benefit sharing. So having discussions with participants, so the different categories of participants, was very helpful in helping me get a sense of what was missing. So when I looked at the data sharing agreement, say on aspects of data ownership, and there were either statements that were not very clear or there was absence of statements in some of the data sharing agreements, I then went and spoke with the different key informants, and now that helped me get a blend and put together all that information. So I did the analysis of the different components of the sub-studies, and then I was able to then integrate, make sense of what was coming up, like from the systematic review, what were the recommendations, what were the gaps. Then I came to the survey, I came to the interviews. I was mindful of the fact that I wanted to listen to, say, the research participants, listen to their views on especially concepts like, say, informed consent, and how their views were different from what the stakeholders were saying, like, say, what the researchers were saying. So all this information, I put this together and then used this to develop the guidance document. So the guidance document has aspects of who will use this document, who are the target users, and then the different recommendations that anyone who is using the guidance document should look into, like something like that will trickle their mind if they have an opportunity to share data in collaborative relationships. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. So the last question I have for you is regarding the risk of re-identification. I think I saw that on slide 23. So my question is, given the advances in GCI, randomization approaches are still sufficient or not? If not, what you propose in our context?
I didn't hear you so well. You said the risk of re-identification. I didn't hear the question well.
Okay, so the question is, looking at the risk of re-identification, that is based on slide 23 that you shared in your presentation. It clearly says the advances in genomics and AI are on the rise. So my question is, are the current anonymization approaches still sufficient? And if not, what new safeguards are you proposing from your work? Safeguards that could work well for the low and middle income countries, like where we are based.
Thank you, Dr. Mboa, for that question. So when you say the current safeguards ideal for protecting, I guess, the privacy or helping in protect re-identification, like we mentioned, and you also hinted earlier on, genomic data is there's always a risk that you can always link this data to the individual. I guess there is need for us to rethink the different approaches, the different safeguards that we have, like the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health have come up with safeguards, but there is need to rethink these different safeguards to see if they are ideal, because now with AI rising, and AI is based on or AI is based on the data, big data that is being shared from genomics data, I guess it is important to rethink and see what data protection mechanisms are in place, what infrastructure is in place. I guess the challenge with low and middle income countries right now is if we have the capacity to be able to even have these safeguards. You realize a situation where most of these safeguards are being done in high-income countries, but when it comes to low and middle-income countries, it's questionable if the safeguards, if we have first of all, the infrastructure and the capacity to be able to have these safeguards in place. But I guess the question or the response is in regard to, for the need for us to be able to develop data protection strategies, improve what we already have, and if there are safeguards that are in place, think of ways of how to move forward, because AI has come and there is no doubt that AI has come, and we just need to rethink the ways and strategies on how to move forward with AI while thinking about the data and the autonomy of the participants who shared their data. Thank you.
Dr. Mbowa, is that all? I think you are muted. Anyway, I think I heard him say that was the last question, and he seems to be off now. Dr. Mbowa, is that all?
Sorry
Right.
for my connection.
Yes.
Just my final question is, I don't know if you can hear me, Debbie.
Yes, I can.
Sorry about my connection. So my final question is regarding your PhD. I know the PhD work must demonstrate clear originality. So the question I have is, what is the most original contribution of your thesis to the stakeholder evidence, regulatory analysis, and the ethical legal framing? So what in each of those aspects?
Thank you, Dr. Mbowa, for that question. So the originality of my work, one is the fact that I get to contribute to the discussions around the sharing of genomics data. So from review of the literature, what has come out really clear is the fact that there is need to strengthen the governance of data sharing, and especially genomic data sharing. So this work will strengthen the element of data governance. And I guess for me, what is interesting or what is really innovative is that this guideline, the checklist that I am developing, will not only be used by one stakeholder, say the researchers, but it will be a go-to document that one will use, the researchers will use, the regulators will use, members of research ethics committees will use, the CAB members will use to be able to speak and represent the views of the community. So it will be a go-to document that anyone in the landscape of the sharing of genomics data will go to. And in that, this work is contributing to closing that gap, the knowledge gap around the ethical, legal, and social implications on the sharing of genomics data. Thank you, Dr. Mbowa.
Thank you very much, and I wish you the best in your career. And yeah, back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbowa, for that engagement. We move on to Dr. Roy Mubuke in 10 minutes or less.
Thank you very much, Chair. Deborah, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Mubuke, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for an excellent study. And it's good to see that you have quite a number of publications out of this work, which means it's good work because they've been peer reviewed. So I have about a number of questions I've been asked, and also I think you'll access my examination report, but I'll just ask about 3.5 questions in the 10 minutes that I have. The first one goes to, would be more general. As a doctoral student, I'm sure you've gone through certain trainings, and one of them was the philosophy of methods. Now, reading through your work, and even in your presentation, you did not talk about your philosophical assumptions. So could you briefly explain to us what your philosophical assumptions were in terms of your ontological orientation and epistemological orientation, which eventually would lead to my next question about your choice of methods?
Thank you so much for that question, Dr. Mobuke. So my philosophical assumption is I'm aligned to pragmatism philosophy, and in pragmatism, the philosophers advocate for the use of a mixed methods approach, and the emphasis is on using different methods to address a given problem. And here, that's why I chose to use qualitative and quantitative methods of data collection and analysis. And then the ontology. Ontology is basically about the nature of reality. And the pragmatists assume that the reality is complex. And now relating this to the sharing of genomics data, trying to understand the context around data sharing. This still was a complex situation because the sharing of genomics data is guided or governed by different factors. So some of these are explicitly written and some are not written out, and these are at the individual level especially. So you'll find a situation where say that at the institutional level, there are expectations around the sharing of data and what it should be, and yet these are not written out. So I chose to understand the complexity around the sharing of genomics data, and of course having biases around. So biases, ontology is linked to the biases and how the given researchers, the bias that the researchers have affects the sharing of data, and linking this still to the institutional choices. So if an institution, the different institutions that I looked at have a negative, so are biased negatively towards the sharing of data, then most of their researchers will not share data. Whereas epistemology is in trying to understand knowledge, or in an understanding of the knowledge, and the philosophers indicate that understanding of knowledge is still complex, and ideally to be able to understand this knowledge, you need to use different methods to get an understanding of this. So what I did was to engage with different institutions. So that was the thinking behind my conduct of this study, that instead of, say, using only one institution, I chose to go to different institutions, research institutions, academic, these different regulatory institutions, to get a feel of what the views, to get their views around the sharing of genomics data. And it helped me get an understanding of what policies, what practices, what frameworks are in place regarding the sharing of genomics data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So it takes me to my second question about your design. So I see you used a lot of methods to collect your data. Surveys, focus groups, interviews, I think desktop reviews, which you claim to have been mixed methods. So would you convince the examination panel that actually these were mixed methods? I think Professor Nanyu talked about your presentation of the data piecemeal, and also the discussion of your findings piecemeal. If you're using mixed methods, it should sweep through right away from your research questions, from your conceptualization to your methods, to the results, and then to the discussion, the synthesis. So did you actually use mixed methods, or you used multiple methods? And what's the difference?
Dr. Mobuke, thank you for that question. So what I use, the overall, so that's why in the slide that I presented that showed the overall methodology, the overall design of my study was a multiple design multiple design and how that is different from the mixed methods. So for the mixed methods, that's basically qualitative and quantitative. But for the multiple design, I incorporated different sub-studies so that different sub-studies all had different data collection arms. Like I had the systematic review, I had the document review, I had the interviews, I had the focus group discussions, and then all that then fed into the guidance document. So the multiple design choice was linked to the fact that I had those different methods. All those arms of the studies were responding, had different questions, and all the questions were still in response to the overall research question. So for mixed methods, it was mixed methods would only be qualitative and quantitative. I hope that answers your question.
I think in your write-up, you need to link that back to your philosophical assumptions, which was missing in your thesis and your presentation. My second last question is on your sub-study 1, where I talk about the systematic review. Now, I got some confusion with this particular sub-study. First of all, you limited your search to 3 databases, PubMed, Google Scholar, and Web of Science. But also in your presentation, you seem to miss rigor of a systematic review, and you included a broad base of studies, quantitative, qualitative, and so on. So did you actually do systematic review, or actually are doing a scoping review? And what was your systematic review question, which you expect to be highly specific as compared to a scoping review? So do you convince yourself that you actually did a systematic review or a scoping review? And what's the difference between those two? And do you think your question for that sub-study would have been answered better using a scoping review rather than a systematic review, which you claim to have used?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mabuke, for that for those questions. Was it a systematic review or a scoping review? I did a systematic review. The difference with a scoping review is like the word scope, it's just a scope of the literature. My study went beyond that because we identified the different databases. Your question, so to respond to your question on why I chose only 3 databases, so the databases that I included were PubMed, Web of Science, and Google Scholar. So that was based on 2 recommendations, one of them being the Cochrane recommendations that state that 2 or 3 databases are ideal for a systematic review, but also given the multidisciplinary choice of the question that I am answering, where I'm looking at the regulation of data sharing. But specifically for the systematic review, my question is, what is the context? The question is, what is the context and practices around the sharing of genomics data in low and middle income countries? So to be able to answer that question, I looked at PubMed, and PubMed was basically to give me a scope, to generate the papers that were linked to biomedical sciences and genomics research. And then Web of Science was basically to give me papers around health research and social sciences because I'm a social scientist. And then Google Scholar was basically to help me identify papers because of the sensitive nature of Google Scholar, and the fact that also Google Scholar would help me get gray literature. And to be able still to respond to that, we kept on refining the search, and we also included, I'm saying we because a systematic review cannot be done by only one person. The search was refined, kept being refined. It's unfortunate that I didn't include it in the thesis because I assumed that since I had included the publication from the protocol, that would be enough. But using these 3 databases was it was evident enough that they would give me nearly close to 100% of the articles that I was looking for in regard to genomics data sharing in low and middle income countries. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. I think in your write-up, you need to include some of that detail, but I also noted the search terms are not included. The inclusion for the articles were not included. You didn't look at things like risk of bias assessment. So your reporting of the systematic review was not rigorous enough. Perhaps you could have done it, but we look at the evidence, the dissertation that you presented. So all these things were not included. And also the Prisma flow diagram was placed somewhere else. My last question is about the sharing of genomics data. So what are the key ethical principles that are most relevant to genomics data sharing? And how would you address group harms? For example, risked communities as communities beyond just an individual who provides the genomics data. So what are the key ethical principles that you would point out?
Thank you, Dr. Mubuke. So the key ethical principles, the first one is autonomy. And in autonomy, we are looking at, like I mentioned earlier on, genomics data has implications that are beyond the individual. So we notice situations where in many cases, the autonomy of these participants is diminished because given the fact that they do not actually have a very good understanding of, say, the genomic terminology, and then also coupled with the fact that most of them, their level of understanding is low, and then many times they are not exactly empowered to make the decision around consent. And this is linked to the fact that many of them still have to go back to the communities where they are from, to their, say, parents or to their siblings, and seek for consent. So in situations like that, you find that their consent, their autonomy is diminished. They are not able to freely take part in a study. Like in one of the quotes that I presented, the member of the CAB highlighted that there are concerns around, say, nails, taking off nails, use of hair, and now if you have to tell people back at home that I'm in a study and they need me to take off nails or hair, many of them are going to link this to say witchcraft or to harm. So even when the participants are willing to take part, sometimes their autonomy is diminished. The second one is around justice and being able to, say, have an equal opportunity to say the results or the benefits that have been alluded to or that have been derived from the sharing of genomics data. And we realize that most of the time, the participants do not even get to know what kind of benefits are coming out or have been derived from sharing of their own data. So that is something else that we need to look into when it comes to genomic data. And then the third is non-maleficence and ensuring that we are doing no harm to the people who have taken part in the sharing or whose data has been shared. But like I mentioned earlier on, I guess we need to think through and see how best we should protect the interests and rights of people whose data has been shared without causing them to be in situations where they are affected negatively.
Okay, the last one, which you can respond to in 30 seconds. So now that you've done your PhD, okay, we hope you'll be successful. If you met the president who has just won his term in office in an elevator, and you have only 1 minute to talk to him about your study, what would you tell him?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Mubuke. If I met the president, I would tell him about the need to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms because we have data sharing agreements, but the Parliament has said nothing about them. Parliament is silent, so the need to strengthen that, as well as the need for benefit sharing frameworks, which will all push for equity in the sharing of data, in the discussions around data sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mubuke, for that engagement. And just trying to find out, is Dr. Barugahare online or in the boardroom?
Yes, he's online.
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Debbie, for the brilliant presentation and on reaching on this milestone. I also want to thank Prof. Violet Nanyu for taking lead in engaging our candidate to discuss her work and the speakers that have spoken before me. Well, Debbie, indeed, your work is very interesting and it is timely. As it has been said over and over again, data is the new oil, both for scientific progress, for technology and innovations. And in your case, this is in the field of health. So from an ethical and pragmatic point of view, it matters how this oil is managed. And given your bias in bioethics, you focused on the ethical aspects of data management. And of course, research data governance is a very broad field. Research data, of course, is not limited to genomic data. So first of all, I'd like to find out, why did you choose to focus on this narrow scope of research data, specifically genomic research data as opposed to all data? Would it have meant that, for example, you're going to do too much work? What is so special about genomic data that you thought that made you think that this is something you need to focus on specifically for your PhD?
Dr. Baragahari, thank you so much for that question. The reason I focused on genomic data is because for a very long time, I had been involved in the conduct of research in the health field, involved in clinical trials. So when I began to work in studies that were looking at genomics data, genomic studies, I became aware of the several issues, ethical, social, and legal tensions in the conduct of genomics research. And also this was mainly tied to the fact that genomics data has implications that are far-reaching beyond the individual. Anything that the individual, any decision that the individual took would have implications on family, would have implications on community. So that was the reason I chose to understand the aspects around the sharing of genomics data in particular, and not data as a whole. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yes, it partly answers my question, but if you don't mind me following up on that.
No, I don't.
If you considered all research data generally, wouldn't it be still possible to address these issues of identification, re-identification, who owns the data and all that? Why specifically, genomic data alone as opposed to all data? What would have you lost, or what would have been difficult addressing all research data in your study?
Thank you so much for that follow-on question, Dr. Barugahari. What would I have lost? I wouldn't have lost anything, but I guess for me, the focus on genomic data is the fact that, so most of these policies that have been developed, like even if we look at the Data Protection Act, is really open. Most of them are open to data as a whole, with limited scope or limited guidance on genomic data. Yet genomic data is highly identifying. It affects everyone, because if someone has your data, if they have, say, your data or part of it, they have your identity. So it gets back to the fact that all of us, genomics data is inherently identifying. And if you have part of my genomics data, it means you have part of my genome. It means you have part of my parents' genome, which has effects, which affects each and every one of us in a way. And yet this is not really being looked into deeply. So that's the reason I chose to focus on this specific area in regard to the sharing of genomics data instead of looking at it as a whole, because several other players are looking at data as a whole. And yeah, that was the drive in the focus on genomics data sharing.
Perfectly answered.
Thank you.
If I wanted to follow up on that and read about that in detail in your work, where would I find it? That kind of justification.
So Dr. Rugahari, so when I went back and looked at my thesis, yes, I noticed that there were things that I left out, and I've been reflecting on how I can make this thesis actually better, given all the recommendations from all the panelists. And I'm certain that when I get back to the thesis, I am going to, it's going to be strengthened. I'll include all the detail because I wasn't sure of how much information I needed to include into my thesis, but yes, I have taken note of that.
Okay, thank you very much for that honesty. Well, talking about the scope of your work, looking at your study title and the entire work, I tried to figure out the scope of your work, but I remained a little bit unsure. At some point, it appears like it is intended to cover all low and middle income countries, such as when you look at how you stepped your specific objective number 1, that is for substantive 1, it refers to low and middle income countries. And then at some point, it seems like the study's geographical scope is Uganda, especially when you look at the way you state your sub-studies 2 and 3. But I couldn't be so sure, so I wanted to find some place in your work where you specifically and categorically describe the scope of your work. What exactly is the scope of your work, and where can I find that in your work?
Thank you so much, Dr. Barugahari. So regarding the scope of my work, I think I wrote about it somewhere in setting, but maybe not very clearly, and still I would need to rethink that. But just to give you a response, as in why I have Uganda, and then I also have low and middle income countries, and that is linked to the fact that so this work was conducted in Uganda as a case study, but it is tailored to low and middle income countries because the setting is similar. So that's why you see in sub-study 1, I was looking at low and middle income countries as a whole. Then in sub-study 2, the focus was Uganda, and then 3 as well, and then crowning it with the development of this guideline, which will be tailored to low and middle income countries that are similar to Uganda.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, from the way things are going, of course, this was meant to be an exercise to see if you own your work, and I don't think there is anything much to prove. But that said, I'll conclude my engagement with you with a few questions on your theoretical framework. Your study is guided by 3 different theories, and they are intended to complement each other in trying to shape your work, giving you some sort of thinking frame in which you address your objectives. The first theory is the general systems theory. The next is the justice as fairness theory by John Rawls, and then principlism. And specifically under John Rawls' distributive justice theory, which is justice as fairness, you indicate that, I quote, the justice-related concerns, such as unequal benefit sharing or fears of ethical imperialism, are addressed through John Rawls' distributive justice framework. One, can you tell us what you understand by this concept of ethical imperialism and what makes it a concern within John Rawls' distributive justice framework?
Thank you so much, Dr. Barugahari. Yes, I use the three theories, and to respond to your question on distributive justice theory and what ethical imperialism is. So ethical imperialism is a situation where say a collaborator imposes a culture on another collaborator. And in this situation, we are looking at a situation where, say, the global north imposed the culture of sharing data on the global south. The reason I highlight it as a concern that would be addressed by the distributive justice theory is because the distributive justice theory is key in addressing systemic and societal level injustice. So you realize that most, I hope I'm safe. Okay, you realize that most of the funding, that comes to Africa has close to it. There will be some of the clause that there will be the sharing of data, unlimited sharing of data to commercial companies. And that is a clause that is tied to funding. So if you say no to that clause, many times you won't get this funding. So sometimes the power asymmetries are way too much and push the researchers from the global north. Most of the times they are left with no situation or no choice. There are also situations where the funding is tied to the fact that this data is now going to become, say, the responsibility of the funder. And so there are issues of power dynamics or power symmetries taking hand in the sharing of data, or their conditions, their agenda is being set by the global north. The agenda is being set by the global north, and this affects the interest of the researchers from the global south, who many times do not have the required skill set to be able to bargain, and that is because they are compromised. Many times they're looking at the salary that they are going to get from this grant coming in for, say, 5 years, and the whole system is compromised. You have researchers who are compromised. You have research ethics committee members who are compromised. The research ethics committee members, the researchers are speaking to the research ethics committee members and telling them, you need to approve this study. You have regulators who are not empowered. So the whole system rotates around compromise. So this theory was critical in helping us look at the systemic injustices around data ownership, data access, and ethical imperialism. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that response. And before I give you a short follow-up question, which should be concluding, Chair, you will allow me to assure Debbie that she's very safe, at least with me. I don't know what is elsewhere, but at least with me, Debbie, you can be sure that you are safe, okay? This is a court. This is not a court sitting, so you are very, very, very safe.
No, I was referring to where I am currently.
Okay. So, again, following up on the relevance of John Rawls' theory of distributive justice to your work, of these theories' core principles, which ones did you find very relevant to your study, and how are they reflected in your whole study generally, whichever part of your study you will choose to focus on? specific principles of
All right.
John Rawls.
So thank you, Dr. Baruga Harris. So the specific can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I focus on the aspect of impartiality and also the aspect of the veil of ignorance. And I don't know if you read part of my work. I said we invoke the veil of ignorance principle. And in invoking the veil of ignorance principle, that one greatly alludes to my work because I'm coming up with guidelines. And many times, I guess, while we are developing guidelines or putting up structures in place or looking at the system as a whole, we are thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about the fact that, say, you say look at one's demographics, maybe one
Can I interrupt you, Debbie? Debbie, can I interrupt you? Well, yes, I take note of your mention of the veil of ignorance, but in order to give you a little bit of guidance, John Rawls' theories, principles. One is about the equal basic liberties for all citizens. The second one is that socioeconomic inequalities must satisfy fairly, a rather fair equality of opportunity and the benefit of the and be of benefit to the least advantaged members of society, which is normally called the difference principle. And then the third principle is the equal opportunity principle, which is about fair equality of opportunity with specific within the way advantages and opportunities are distributed. So of those three, which one did you find very of John Rawls' theory of distributive justice? Which one of those did you find more relevant in your work, and how did they influence the way you did your work and your discussion and everything?
Thank you so much for the clarification, Dr. Baruga Hari. I guess the one that speaks or alluded more to my work is the fairness principle. The difference principle, and how it's alluded to the work is, I guess, the fact that most of the times communities have been left out. The voices of communities have been silenced. And this is evident in the fact that many times researchers do not ideally listen to the communities or to the participants. It's more of, like I had mentioned earlier on, getting the consent done, whether the participants understand the entire process or not. It's more of just ticking a box around consent. And also there are facts sometimes, given the genomic data or genomic participation in a genomic study is based on trust. Sometimes the researchers believe that participants take part in these given studies because of trust, but many times it's because of the power dynamics and their voices are silenced. They do not have the ground enough to speak. So for me, that speaks directly to the fact that there is need to listen to the communities where this data is from and have them at the back of our minds, even in regards to the benefits that allude from the shared data. We need to consider the communities as key players or key stakeholders in the sharing of data, not just not thinking of them last. That is something that has been happening, and for long research has been extractive. So I guess we need to change the narrative along this extractive research and look at community players as key players other than just subjects. So that is what speaks directly to me, and I hope that that answers your question.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I've come at the end of my questions. I will only end with an assignment to Debbie. She does not have to answer this one, but she can reflect upon it along the way. What does John Rawls' theory of distributive justice fix in your work that could not have been fixed using the principle of justice within principles? You don't have to respond to that now, but you are thinking assignment as we go along. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barugahari. I enjoyed the social science stint. Quite some bit of learning for me as well. Anyway, thank you very much for that engagement with the candidate. And last and not least is now Professor Chen in 10 minutes or less. Over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dean, and the colleagues. Deborah, thank you for your work and the wonderful presentation. I'm coming last. You must be tired by now. I hope my questions and comments will not bore you. Yeah, just to follow up on, I've had a discussion on this thing called ethical imperialism. That is a word that was coined by one of us, Dr. Edward Katongole Mbide, some time back, when there were fights about ethics of research in the rich countries and in the poor countries at the peak of HIV. So ethical imperialism came. Now I'm hearing it's becoming an international word. Very interesting. Deborah, just a question. Let me start with a question. What was the title for your dissertation?
The regulation of data sharing in collaborative human genomic research, ethical, social, and legal implications.
The regulation. And what was the systemic review about?
Sorry, I didn't hear that well.
That is the title?
Sorry, Professor
The systemic
Chen,
review. What was the title of the systemic review?
The systematic review,
yes,
was about the context and practices around the sharing of genomics data in low and middle-income countries.
Okay, because my confusion is when you talk about regulation in your title. So what I'm looking at, yeah, laws, guidelines, policies, regulations that guide that type of work. Because regulation means laws, guidelines, policies, and so on. Which one of your sub-studies covered this regulation?
Thank you, Professor Cheng, for that question. So regulation, the aspect of regulation was covered by my sub-study too. I think just to note that I didn't include the definition of regulation here, but in regulation here, we are looking at the different policies that are in place, the different laws, the different tools that are guiding the sharing of genomic data. So sub-study two, sub-study two looked at the legal aspects around the sharing of genomics data and what governs the sharing of genomics data. Then sub-study three, we looked at those data sharing agreements, which are now required, a requirement by the Uganda National Council of Science and Technology. So sub-study three looked at those data sharing agreements and the components that the data sharing agreements should have. And still we evaluated so sub-study three involved an evaluation of the ethical regulatory framework. And still in that sub-study, there was an aspect of regulation that was involved. This regulation was at both institutional level, looking at what is done at the institutional level, as well as at the national level. Thank you.
So sub-study one was what type of study? Was that a qualitative study or
sub-study?
So
sub-study one was a systematic review of literature.
Sub-study two?
Sub-study two was the mixed method study that involved qualitative and quantitative arms of the project. And then sub-study three was a document review as well as the interviews.
So sub-study three was a document review. And it was different from the systematic review. Because I'm thinking if it were me, I would have thought this regulation, the first one, rather than a systematic review that looked at a few of those databases, I would have done a scoping review of these guidelines, policies, and laws, because we're looking at regulation. That's what I would have thought. But anyway, okay, let's continue. A few other things, just like I need clarification. Yeah, there is somewhere where you said, I think it's in using age in your data analysis, that increasing age, but then you are not specific in your presentation. What age, at what age? Does it start from age 1, age 5, or is there a specific age whereby increasing age is associated with the increasing sharing, or is it all ages?
Professor Cheng, thank you so much for that question. So when I noted that with increasing age, there is more likelihood of people to share data. So the older one gets this, I guess the older one gets, there was evidence that there was more likelihood to share data. And this was still linked to the fact that even in the qualitative findings, qualitative somehow disagreed with that, because the qualitative results showed that instead it was the younger researchers, say those that, what came out really key was the fact that younger researchers who are looking at, say, getting a collaboration or getting a salary for the next 5 years were instead willing to share genomic data compared to the older ones. But still in line with the older ones, we noticed that maybe that could be linked to the fact that career level could be linked to career level. And we noticed that people who are at a higher career level, higher than, say, emerging researcher, who are more likely to share data because they have been involved in genomics research, they have been involved in development of set contracts, they have better terms, and they can speak, and so they are able to make their terms. So those as well who are likely to share data. So there is an interplay, there is variation around older researchers vis-a-vis the younger researchers and their willingness to share genomic data.
So, and this one again, I mean, my question and your response brings us back to a question that has already been raised. Was there any form of triangulation? Because in one study, you're saying as you grow, you're willing to share. Then in the other study or sub-study, you say the young ones are more willing to share, which is a bit confusing. But I mean, if you did your methods were talking to each other with the triangulation, I think this one would have been one of those very good findings that he would have discussed. So in line with the methods again, in sub-study 3, you, in your presentation, talked about content analysis. What was the study about? What group of people did you do?
For sub-study 3? So for sub-study 3, sub-study 3 was a review of the data sharing agreements that were provided at 3 institutions that I selected. And I used interviews as a form of validation to be able to confirm some of the findings that I had found out from the data sharing agreements.
So you did interviews with which group of people?
Oh. Okay, so I did interviews. Hello? Sorry, I was getting back. I was just taking some water. So I did interviews with researchers, with some of the lawyers who develop or participate in the development of those data sharing agreements. And then I also did interviews with the regulators to find out their view around the documents, around the data sharing agreements. So that's why the interviews were a form.
Was it the interviewed data that was used for content analysis, or was it the documentary review data that was used for content analysis, or both?
No, the interview data was not used for content analysis. The interview data was analyzed thematically. The content analysis was from the data sharing agreements that were reviewed, because we looked at them to find out what categories were coming out. And then it was from that we looked at the different text with the person who I was working closely with, looked at text. And then from that, I was able to come up with frequencies regarding the different statements that I had, that we came up with, discussed, looked at the differences, any variations or similarities, and then came up with the different frequencies that were included in the report. And also just
thank you. Yes, now that one takes me to my next point. In your presentation, you added something later when the panelists asked, but in your presentation you said your innovation was doing research that is context specific, and I felt that one alone was inadequate. What else would make this one an innovation? Because it's context specific, there is already some information or some data or some work that has been done. Being context specific alone will not make your stuff an innovation. So what else could you add to strengthen what you say this is an innovation? And you do not have to answer that one, but you can think about it, and maybe when you're improving on your write-up, you can add in what is real innovation. And we need the number of points that will, it's an argument. You have to convince us that we did this one, it's new, it's not here. We did this one, it's a new thing, it's not here. We did this one, to make it appear like really an innovation. Then my next comment is on that guidance document. Again, it's been mentioned that the process of developing that document is not clear, did not present it, and neither is it written in your write-up. Maybe my question is, who are you targeting with this guidance document? Who is it for?
Thank you, Professor Cheng, for that question. So the guidance document is for players, all players involved in the landscape of genomics research. And the players include the researchers, they include the research committee members, they include the regulators, they include members of community advisory boards, the lawyers who review these different documents. Yes, and it's mainly, we're also targeting the institutional leaders because they have a role in making decisions around the sharing of genomics data. So all players involved.
Okay, and you developed this document. The document came from the data you collected, is that so?
The documents came from the recommendations that were made from the different stakeholders that were involved in the conduct of the study.
Yeah, that's the data you collected. So maybe you would make it better by one, because you've not disseminated from what I've had. You need to go back and disseminate, engage these individuals much more. They would give you much more information on this development of the document. Two, after that, there is a process where again, selected stakeholders will come in to help you develop a document. Otherwise, as it is now, it can be just your document, and you may not get much, change in the way people are doing.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen. Thank you for that guidance. Maybe just to mention some of the things that I have done.
Until they own it.
Sorry, I was saying, thank you so much, Dr. Professor Chen. I don't know if you can hear me.
Lost you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so
yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, I was saying thank you so much, Professor Cheng, for those recommendations. Just to mention, so the plan for that document. So like I mentioned earlier on, I'm here at Imperial trying to understand the processes around the sharing of genomics data and the data protection. So like the data protection policies around, and all these will contribute to improving the guidance document. One of the things that I have also done is to present this guidance document at an international conference that is the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, basically to just get stakeholder input. So from the recommendations that I have received, I am going to get the recommendations, review them, see how best to improve the document, and then I will come back, present the document to the stakeholders. I had mentioned that the plan is to have a stakeholder engagement, and I will use that opportunity to present the recommendations that I have and present the documents that I have for further engagement with the stakeholders. And then later on, I guess that's when I'll have a small meeting with a few of the stakeholders to see what the document looks like. And then I will then present it to the regulators for their input and see if it is something that they can take on or maybe consider including as an addendum to the guidelines, that the national guidelines that are already available. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely on that. That's what I said. But what I'm saying is it would be better if you go back now and do the dissemination. Because the dissemination is one way, it's like proofreading. Did these guys mean this? When you do the dissemination, you're collecting more data to enrich what you already have or polish it up. Then you can do all those other processes you talked about. My last comment is about the data sharing agreement. I heard the blame, most of the blame being pushed on the researcher who does not have the capacity to negotiate and related stuff. This data sharing many times does not go alone. It goes together with a well revised, detailed document, the materials transfer agreement. Yeah, I was saying the data sharing agreement in many times goes in together with the materials transfer agreement. These documents are supposed to be, yes, drafted by researchers, signed by institutions such ethics committee, as well as National Council for Science and Technology. So it's not only the researcher, unless all of us in that field, we are not doing our work. The institutions that have legal offices that should read agreements and seek for fair benefits are not doing that, then we cannot blame the researcher alone. The research ethics committee, a layer that would help to look at the ethical and those other issues of equity, is not doing its work. So let's go beyond the researcher, and it's very clear in the guidelines and so on that we do. And two, I don't want to agree with you. I said there are no laws and so on. The Data Protection and Safety Act is a very applicable law, and you can use it in all aspects of data. So we need to learn to interpret it and use it in a specific type. Don't expect a law that will come and say, this is for health, this is for legal law, this one is for veterinary, this one is for transport, because it's a law that looks at all data from human beings. So we can still use it as an applicable law, and it's very effective. So let's not feel we can't understand it. Let's seek that data we are using in health research. And then we already there. We have a lot of stuff on this aspect. It's the way we apply it that is missing. I think we have already enough. We just need to see what are the challenges of putting these policies and the regulations in practice, and then we'll be able to go. And probably as you do your work, as you build on your work, those are some of the issues you need to ask. What are the challenges of implementing what is already available? Why are we not doing it the way it's supposed to be done, despite all these layers of the REC, the UNCST, the institution, the researcher, and the collaborators? What is going on? Because even if we come up with a new policy, if people are not using the policy that we have, we will have changed nothing. We need to identify what is failing us to use what is already there. And once you address that one, maybe you need a new policy, maybe not. The old policy can still cover most of those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Cheng. Would you like me to respond?
Be brief.
Yes, thank you for those recommendations. So one of the regulators that we spoke to were from the Data Protection Act, and basically to get their views around the Data Protection Act and the need to strengthen it, or the need to make it more user-friendly, or to make it applicable in the field of health research. And I guess what came out really key was the fact that when they were developing it, they didn't think about the need to limit it, but it was a recommendation that they thought was good to take forward. And then regarding the aspect of researchers being involved in the development of the agreements, in one of the slides, I think that's why I alluded to the fact that it would be good for researchers to have their capacities developed, but also for the contracts management system as a whole. And this contract management system involves different players, not only the researchers, because there are so many players, some of who are doing their work and some are not. I guess maybe it skips, but there is need for the whole system guiding the sharing of genomics data to be strengthened, which is not dependent on only one person. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Chen, and thank you, Deborah, for the responses. So I think in the interest of time, now I will allow only 2 questions from the public, one online and the other one in the conference room, if they are there. Can I have the first questions for maybe the conference room? Or if you are not ready, I will have MU John. You can tell us your name in full. You are the one to ask the online question.
Okay, thank you very much, the organizer, for this opportunity. My name is John. I have to emphasize that, yes, I'm a Ugandan, but based in the global Far East, because she has been talking about the global North, the global South, but I am based in the global Far East. I am a PhD student of biomedical science, and whatever she has been talking about is actually related to me in one way or the other. So I thank her, and then I appreciate her work. And before I go to my questions or my concerns that I had, I really have to thank Dr. Mbowa. I think he's on this, still on the call, because it's on his social media, the way I saw this a couple of days ago, and then I picked a very much interest. Then I had to set my alarm because of the time differences we have. So that I set my alarm and I don't miss this. And I'm really, really glad that I didn't miss this, thanks to my alarm.
I will follow the guidance from Professor, our discussant. Those are good to know, but can you please go to the question?
Yes, I have these 2 questions. Like I said, I'm a biomedical science PhD student. So these are the questions that I wanted to know from her for the perspective. Yeah, so because of my background, I also do genomics research a lot where I am in the lab where I am, and we do too much data sharing. So when I saw this topic, I was really, really intrigued to know more about it. But one thing I wanted to know from her, because for last year we followed the Helsinki Declaration, and then we also followed the IRBs of the institutes, of the hospitals, and of the laboratories that we work with. So I don't know whether in her research or in her engagement with the stakeholders, she took any interest in what does the Helsinki Declaration talk about in terms of data sharing, and then what do the IRBs that we have in Uganda, what do they do? What is their role in this case? So this is the first question. Then another thing I wanted to know is
only one question.
Yes.
Can we check that? You can type the rest of the questions in the comments, so that she can either respond to them in her write-ups or whatever. But
this is the last question. Is even her proponent talked about it. Her topic is about genomic data sharing, but I didn't hear of the DNAs, the RNA-seq, this kind of genomics, the real genomics. I didn't hear. So maybe this is something I missed, or maybe she can clarify, because I didn't hear about the genomics in this. Because I heard she was talking about taking people's hair, like, don't you think that this even somehow scared some of her participants? Because they would be like, where do they want to take my hair from? Yet in genomics, we don't actually, not interested in taking people's hair. Yeah, so I would like to be clarified on these issues. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, John, from the Far East. Okay, Deborah, make note of the questions. We want to hear another question from the public, but from the conference room, and then you respond to both at the same time. Conference room, any burning question over there? Or we proceed with the second question from online. Any burning question from the conference room?
No, nobody seems to ask a question. You can continue.
Can we have another? No question. Okay, if there's no question from the conference room, can we have a second question from the online audience? The second and last question. I see no hand. This is the nod hand from John. Online audience, if you have a question, just unmute and ask. Last chance. Okay. No question. But you have noted from John. Good. So, colleagues, once again, thank you for this engagement. We have heard from Professor Nanyu, the discussant, the main discussant, and then from the 4 panelists. I'm requesting to have a way of having us go to a private session, probably away from the general public, so that we do deliberations in about 10 minutes. That's the main discussant, Professor Nanyu, if she's still on, and the 4 panelists, myself, the supervisors. We need to go in a separate.
I'm still here, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. We need to go to a separate room. We deliberate in 10 minutes. The registrar has to be there also, because since I'm far away as well, the registrar will at one point read out the guidance and the comments and for us quickly.
The registrar is with us in the room.
Yes, we need either we stay here and myself and Professor Nanyu and the panelists online, we are separated from the general audience so that we do a deliberation.
So I would like, Mr. Chair, I would like some clarity.
Yes, yes.
The supervisors, do we move out?
No, you stay. You won't score, but you should be part of the. Okay. You will witness how the assessment goes on, but you are not going to score.
Is that democracy?
So I see no one making a private room for us online. I don't know how to.
So the IT people are doing it. I mean, they are.
Okay.
Okay. The ones to and
They are creating a breakout.
they are creating a breakout.
Sure. For the discussant, myself, Dr. Baruga Hagade, Professor Cheng, Dr. Mbowa, who else was online? Dr. Roy is over there in the.
We are with Roy here then.
So,
All right.
In the opening. Yeah,
Three panelists, myself and the opponent.
the movement. I don't talk about Tanzania. Then Dr. Chatondo David.
I saw also the other supervisor from KwaZulu Natal on this.
Professor Shenoka is out there.
Hi, Chair. I'm around. Thank you.
Oh, welcome, Prof.
Thank you.
You should also join us in a private room.
That's okay. Then let me see. Violet. I think that's. Professor Cheng. Yeah, Professor Cheng. You're okay. Is there?
Yes, where do you want me, guys? I don't know where to go. I've not seen the invitation to the private room.
We are waiting. Oh, I am seeing now.
Joseph, are you worried?
Okay, thank you very much. I can see the conference room. I see all the 4 panelists. Of course, Dr. Roy is in person there in the conference room. I see all the supervisors. One is physical, the others are online. Thank you very much. So if we have the registrar there, this is a quick exercise, colleagues. We have a few questions, and I would want, but these questions are around the candidate's expertise or what we think she learned during her journey and how she communicated and how she answered the questions. But I won't dwell much on that. I will let Angela quickly read that, or the registrar. Is it Angela or Vicky who is there? Can you please quickly read those out so that we go to the scoring in the interest of time? Read the relevant areas to the examiners and panelists to each give their views. And as they do read, Vicky will make note of their comments, because we need to file that report to the university. Over to you.
Chair. This is the public defense examination report. On this report, we already included. That's the dates of the examination, the name of the candidate, degree to be awarded, the thesis title or dissertation. Then I think we shall go to number 5. That is the thesis format. Is it a monograph? That's A. Chapters as standalone papers. Then C. A completion of papers either already published or accepted for publication. So we need to tick of the 3 words.
It was a monograph. It was a monograph. Yes.
But that option is not there.
It's C.
So there are 3 options. Monograph,
chapters as standalone paper. Then completion of papers either already published or accepted for publication.
Ours here is usually a mix, but you can.
It's publication. It's a mix, but I think publications, not monogram.
Maybe. Or you can do tick both.
Number 3.
I've seen to avoid issues, we have been ticking monogram, but it's okay. Let's do.
Mr. Chair, monogram is where you have no publications at all.
Okay, let's
the
take
typical dissertation.
Where she has published.
So this one is a dissertation by whatever publication. PhD by publication.
All right. Registrar, can you go to the points where we ask for views from the panelists?
So number 6 says assessment of candidates' knowledge of the subject by the paper panel. So the knowledge of the candidate.
So what are the other criteria? Perhaps you tell us all of them. And
yeah, you can read all of them so that each of the panelists give their views. And
so knowledge, what else?
Starting with the main discussant.
That is the candidate's presentation skills, the quality of the thesis, candidate's response to questions.
Okay.
Professor Nanyu, we'll start with you.
All right, I got a knowledge presentation. What was the third? And then response. What was the third one? Sorry.
Can you recap a bit?
Presentation skills.
Read
again.
Number 3.
The candidate's presentation skills. Quality of thesis.
Quality of this is okay.
Yes. Then candidate's response to questions.
Yeah. All right. So I stand guided. I'm not sure. Are we, Chair, supposed to score out of a certain total
Yes.
for each of these 4?
I doubt, but after our response to those, we are going to score. Each one of us will give a score. Isn't it so? Oh, Vicky, guide, please.
Yes, that score out of 10.
Each is scored out of 10. So so we end up with a total of 40. Have I understood?
No, the pass mark is 60%. So when you're scoring out of 10, then if a candidate passes, then they should score 6 and above. If they fail, then they should score below 6.
Registrar.
I think
the opponent.
If I understand Prof. Nanyu's question, she's asking, are we supposed of each of these 3 items, are we supposed to score them differently, or our impression on how they perform on all of them altogether, so that we give only 1 mark to cover all, or we just score each of them separately?
Yeah, correct. That's my question. Because if these 4 domains are totally scoring 40, it tells me that I should score out of 10 each of them. I just wanted that clarity. But the question the chair asked me, I acknowledge this, and I'm able to score this. But then now we talk about this is by papers. So if it's papers and we've confirmed they are in mainstream peer-reviewed journals and things like that, I'm left wondering how this applies, because I know how this applies when we are scoring a regular thesis submission. Over. Thank you.
So
yes, Professor. Go on, Professor Cheng. You are unmuted.
No, she needs to score.
Yeah, Professor Nanyu, thank you. You are going
No, it's okay. I'd already given my comment.
Yeah, you are going to score. I think the scoreable areas are the 3 areas which the registrar has read out. Maybe she can recap on them for us again.
The candidate's presentation skills, then the quality of the thesis, the knowledge of the subject, then the response to questions.
There are 4 areas actually.
Yeah, there are 4. I'm well guided, thank you. So then if it's out of 10 each, the total is out of 40, right?
Yes.
Okay, I've understood. So we are all doing that, and then we send in our marks to you, Chair?
You say, I think you can send to the registrar, the conference room there. He's the one who is collecting.
We are recording the scores. They put in the chat.
The chat, yes.
The chat.
Oh yeah, we can use the chat. Thank you.
Can use the chat.
That chat will be seen by everyone when you go back to the main room.
Maybe you can send to
the
one level mark CHS
and it's
conference.
Recorded. Chair.
Pardon?
She can say out the mark and the registrar here records it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I can verbally say it. I've
Yes.
scored.
Yes.
Can I give it, Chair?
Please, maybe I can re-echo what Professor Cheng said. The pass
Okay.
mark is overall 60% for each of those, and that I think that's kind of the campus. Over to you, Professor Nani.
I think you lost me again. I thought I was scoring out of 10 for each of these, for a total of.
It is okay, out of 10,
40,
each of
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I was just giving guidance that.
Okay. Because in my written report, I had also submitted a score and a grade. All right, then.
Yes.
So for knowledge of the subject, I say 7 out of 10.
Good.
For presentation skills, I think she did very well, 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Then for the quality of the thesis, I have a lot of questions. The theory application and justification, the methodology details are missing. The missing dissemination within country and limited therefore data interpretation and expansion by grassroots level and local users. So for that, I score 6 out of 10 for quality of the thesis. And the responses, I felt she was very defensive as opposed to more being explanatory and also sucking in the instructions for improvement. So for that, I score her 5 out of 10. So I have 7, 8, 6, 5.
So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Professor
you, Chair.
Anu. So what's the average? We can quickly do. Oh no, we have the overall average. Let's have the other panelists also do score, beginning with the as in the order they did present. Dr. Mbowa.
For the let me get the order right. The first one is, which category is that?
Knowledge of the subject.
Knowledge of the subject, I'll give 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah.
Then presentation.
The next presentation skills, I'll give her 7.5.
Quality of the thesis.
6.5.
Then candidate's response to questions.
6. I'll give her 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mbowa. I think next was it Dr. Barugahari?
Roy Mubuke.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Roy.
Let me also score knowledge. I give 8 out of 10. Presentation skills. Presentation skills, 7.5 out of 10. Quality of the thesis, 6 out of 10. And response to questions, 6 out of 10.
Thank you, Roy. Dr. Barugahari?
Yeah, thank you. Knowledge of the subject, 7 out of 10. Presentation skills, 8 out of 10. Then quality of thesis, 6.5. And response to questions, 5.5. I agree she was very defensive. She used a lot this thing of, I hope that answers your question. Almost always at every end of her submission, she seemed to be wanting to force someone to be satisfied with her answer. And I think that needs to be mentioned to her at some point. It's not a good practice. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Barugahari. And Professor Wucheng, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, knowledge, to me, this person need the philosophical concepts, the whatever, theoretical concepts, and so on, we are all lacking. And she didn't really do much. So I'll score a 6 out of 10. Presentation skills, I'll give her 7 out of 10. Quality of the dissertation leaves a lot. Really have to, yeah, it's patches. You don't really, it's difficult to follow. I'll score 5 out of 10. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
We missed a bit.
Response.
Chair, back to you. Sorry?
The last scores, we missed the last two scores.
Response to.
Oh, the quality of the dissertation, yeah, it leaves a lot. It's really so many gaps. I scored that 6 out of 10. And then the response to questions, I score 5 out of 10.
Thank you very much. Panelists and our main discussant. Over to you, the registrar. Do you have the average?
So you need to get the average. I think as they're calculating.
Yes, please.
Maybe any of the panelists can give some remarks as they are winding up with the average regarding Deborah and way forward.
Actually, we wanted to make just one or more written comments, area for improvement to be captured. Particularly, Professor Nanyu mentioned them. We can summarize what she said, or she can recap on that regarding the area for improvement, and any other panelist can contribute to that. That's what we needed to put down. Areas of to point out areas for improvement, assuming the grade is okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a request. I'm
Yes.
deep in the village and my battery is at 2+. So I've been on this phone for the last 2 to 3 hours.
Yes.
So anytime it's going off. So if you see me disappearing, yeah. I'm trying to charge from the car, but it just keeps going down. That's why you hear my vehicle making noise. But anytime it's going off, it's been going down. It's now at 2%. So if I disappear, please understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, the average is 64%.
6.4.
So pass.
She's stating yes, the average.
6 point. It's under 500.
So you go to the area where we tick.
Chair,
it is a pass.
Chair, the registrar is telling us the average mark, overall average.
Is what? Is what?
64%.
Okay, so it is a pass with there's that clause. If the pass mark is that, there's somewhere where you need to tick.
So there is a recommendation on the Fiverr that is a pass or fail.
It's a pass, given the pass mark.
So I think there are 3 options there. Accept as is, maybe you can read them out.
So there's 4 decisions are open to examination committee, voting to be based on simple majority, then the thesis can be 1, no corrections are necessary, that is accepted as submitted. Minor corrections are required, accepted with minor modifications. Then major corrections are required, and the thesis should be resubmitted. A, to the satisfaction of the intern examiner, then for re-examination. And number 4 is rejected. Those are sections. So 1 would be no corrections are necessary. Is it accepted as submitted? Is it?
No.
No?
So minor corrections are required, accepted with minor modifications?
I think yes.
What's the next one?
The next major corrections are required. That it should be resubmitted to the satisfaction of the intern examiner and for re-examination. That is the one.
That's no, re-examination means she has to return to this defense.
Yeah.
So I think in my view, I would give my view as one of the panelists. I think there are corrections, yes, but I think from the presentation, she owns the work, she did the work. There are some key things that need to be patched up, but I think we can take it as minor and one of the examiners to look at it. Doesn't need to be re-examined.
So we need to come.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. We should know that examiner now. We can.
So I don't know what the rest think. That's my view.
Unless they were opposing views. Maybe is our opponent in agreement with that? Professor Nani?
Yes, Chair. I'm fully in agreement that she is given time to do the edits, and it doesn't require to come back to this platform, or even I think to the external. I've sent in my report, and I can also send. Oh yeah, it was captured also today verbally, so I think you already have that. So in other words, I agree with the current position proposed. Over.
Thank you very much, Professor Nani. So if there are no contrary views, can we identify the internal examiner to oversee the corrections?
I think Chair, I can oversee if that's fine with you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard Mbowa. Okay, colleagues, we needed to, the very, very last one, to point out areas of, I think we have done that. We have done that. We have pointed out weaknesses to emphasize during our corrections, unless there is a major...
Even the reports, I think she has access to the reports.
She has access to the reports.
So she'll also use the reports, and she'll get minutes from this with further comments. So she uses the reports and the comments from this defense to improve the book. And Dr. Mbowa will look at the book and he'll give clearance after getting satisfied that all these issues have been addressed.
Thank you very much. So colleagues who are in person there, I hope you will sign that form, which is with the registrar. Personally, I will be signing when I return to campus. And we will find a way of having the other panelists who are online signing it. Otherwise, I want to thank you really very much. For me, this exercise I've been learning also. Anyway, I will say these remarks when the other general audience is back. So can we be taken back, IT person, so that we announce the white smoke? And the audience which was physically there should be invited back as well. So we are back, colleagues, online, and I hope everyone is hearing me. And I hope our panelists are back. I've left the breakout session, especially Professor Nanyu, Dr. Mbowa, Dr. Barugahare, and Professor Cheng. Professor Cheng warned us of his battery. But do we have Professor Nanyu here, Dr. Barugahare here?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. So
I'm here as well.
Yeah, I'm only going to announce the news, and I will leave the rest of the session with the Professor Mwaka over there to proceed. But I think on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for standing in. I would like to announce that Deborah Ekusai his defense, both the thesis and defense have been found worth a PhD of Makerere University. Though to the satisfaction of the assigned reviewer, you would have to attend to the corrections, which will be communicated to you to the satisfaction of the reviewer who has been assigned to you. I think that's Dr. Gerard Mbowa. I want to take this opportunity. I'm going to log off and I leave you continue with the Professor Mwaka, but I want to really, really thank the panelists, beginning with our main discussant, Professor Nanyu. Really, thank you very much for standing in. You have been around for 3 hours. It has been too much. But for me, today I've had a lot to learn, and this is one of the best defenses I've ever attended, learning lots of things, social sciences, and I wonder why our politicians keep thinking social science is not science, it's an actual science. For me, I've learned a lot of stuff I didn't know, which I really find relevant in my basic biomedical science. So we'll continue engaging our politicians to remind them that this is the actual science, in fact. But really, thank you, Professor Nanyu. Thank you, Dr. Barugahari. Thank you, Dr. Amboa. Thank you, Professor Cheng. And thank you, Dr. Roy, and the general public who asked questions and who attended in to listen, both in person and here. And I think for me, I will end it here, but there may be some few remarks to make. I leave to you, Professor Mwaka, over to you. The supervisors, I have to thank them, obviously, of course. I thank the supervisors, Professor Mwaka, Dr. Chadondo, and Dr. Singi from, I think, KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you. She has been with us also for 3 hours. We really thank you for mentoring Deborah. And I think the funding you've received, we really, really thank you for this, all the support, the mentorship. For me, I will end it here, and over to you, Dr. Mwaka, for the final precisions and closing the meeting.
Okay, thanks, thanks, my boss. I was going to strangle you if you hadn't thanked the supervisor, but better late than never. So, Deborah, congratulations. I would like to inform you that there is an entire clan here. I don't know whether you've seen them. There's Mr. Sebatta. There are 3 girls. There's a small boy. Then there is Mr. and Mrs. Muinda, though that's the family. Is well represented. And of course, this is your day. Now that you're officially a PhD holder, officially but not yet confirmed until you satisfactorily address all the comments that are going to come your way. And since you're the main celebrant today, I'm going to give you a chance to say something, but I would like to thank Professor Violet Nanyu. Violet, thanks very much.
Most welcome.
Yeah, and I would like to thank you. First, I would like to thank you for having agreed to examine the thesis. I would like to thank you for having accepted to be the opponent, and I would like to say that yes, we'll continue working together. So I would like to give Deborah a chance to say something, and maybe before she does so, I would request one of the supervisors, either Professor Shenuka Singh or David Chadondo, to say something briefly. Then Deborah will wind up.
Shenuka, please, can you please represent us? Thank you, Elisa.
Hi, everyone. It's been a long session, but thank you. I think there was such great, meticulous interrogation of the work that it really, really shows the grit that the PhD level at Makerere University undergoes. And I think I'm very, very proud to be associated with the student supervision, together with the university as well. It's really been great. Deborah, I think you've been a great student. I don't think that your presentation actually covered the immense work that you put in. You really, really went beyond the call of duty of being a student. You tried your very best. It was difficult. It was a big project, very massive, with so many different subsections attached to it, but you did a brilliant job. And as a student, as a candidate for PhD, this is a learning curve. And it's lifelong learning. So you're going to continue learning in the space. You're going to become a leader. Well, you are actually emerging as a leader in the space as well. And I think on behalf of the co-supervisors, I wish you the very best. I know you're going to do us proud. You're going to do the continent proud. You're going to do the country proud. And really, I think this is time for your celebration. Well done and all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya.
Thanks, thank you very much, Shenuka. So now, Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I can't believe this day is finally here. It's a day I have waited for and prayed about, and I thought it wouldn't come, but it's finally here. Thank you so much. I want to begin by thanking the Almighty God for making this day successful. I can't see people who are in the conference room clearly. I would have loved to see everyone's faces, but I thank everyone who's attended, either physically or virtually. It really means a lot. I would like to thank my supervisors for the immense work that they have done. Professor Mwaka, thank you so much for leading the team, for working with me, for believing in me. I thank Shenuka for mentoring me. I thank Dr. Chadondo for really listening to me. I am really proud to have a great supervision team. I also want to thank the doctoral committee that's been part of this work. All of them have been great, but I would really like to thank Associate Professor Mafijiri. Thank you so much for being there for me. I want to thank the funders of this work for being there for me, the Makerere University International Bioethics Program, led by Professor Sewan Campbell. Thank you so much for believing in me and giving me the opportunity to do this PhD. I must say I am a different person from the way that I began. I thank all the people who have been involved. Harriet, thank you so much for being our headmistress. I want to thank Edward as well. I want to thank the faculty, Dr. Munabi, Dr. Barugahare, Dr. Spire, for all that you have done. Thank you so much. I thank everyone who is there. Dr. Mwinda, I know you're extremely busy, but thank you so much. Your wife is there as well. Dorothy, I see you. I can't see, sorry. I'm really struggling to see, but yes, for everyone, I'll come back to my husband and the children. Thank you so much. I thank the Office of the Dean, because when I was coming here, I was a bit disturbed, not sure about how I'll be able to pull it off, but I thank the Dean so much for the support that he gave me in ensuring me that the defense will be held and organized. And I also want to thank Angela so much. Angela, thank you so much for being there, for encouraging me and not closing your doors. I would like to thank all the people who have been involved, my employers, my team, the team from IDRC, from Haki, the support I have received from the PhD students. There is Dr. Claire there who has really been very instrumental in pushing for this. She has walked the journey with me. I would like to thank the UK team as well. They are here, they're in three categories. One, there's the team from Imperial that have been extremely supportive. And then I have I don't know if you can see them, but we have a full house here. Yes, yes, Andrew, I see you. So yeah, they are my African friends who are doing their PhD as well. There is Beta, and then there is Kathy. They have been very supportive. And then there's my family here, my UK family, my cousins who are here, Caroline, Rocky, Grace, and Auntie Joy, who is representing my mom, who is my mom here. I am honored to have you all. They are my friends who have been extremely supportive. There are people who have taken this PhD of mine to another level, just in ensuring that it gets to where it is. And I would just like to mention their names briefly. There is Dr. Father Charles, there is Dr. Miriam Nantamo, there is Dr. Chinto, who is here with me in the UK. There's just so many people who have really been instrumental. There's Dr. Badru. They have looked at my work, they've reviewed it, they've provided feedback. There's Dr. Andrew. All of you have been very good. There are people who have ensured they understand statistics. There's Katairo, there's Phoebe. All of you, I can't mention the names. There's Dr. Harriet Nansha, but all of you have been extremely supportive. There's Dr. Barbara Ndagire. Some of you have even taken it a step further, and you have attended physically. I don't take that for granted. Everyone who's been instrumental, I know you're very key. There's someone who I would like to appreciate, who ensured my conceptual framework came from what it was. I've had to revise it so many times, and that's Dr. I call him Kadi, but Dr. Muzale. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your support, all the times we've had to wake up in the night, for everyone who's been helpful, who's done something. People have prayed for me, people have loved me. They've just made me feel very good. I want to thank my family, the Ekusai family. I know Dorothy's there. I know some of them could be online. I don't know who's online, but thank you so much. There's my mom who's prayed for me all the time. And I must say this PhD journey has really been very humbling. I've questioned myself several times, but I am thankful to the Almighty God that we are here today and has made this a success. I thank all the examiners for your time, and I thank everyone, all the support from my fellow PhD students on the program, and everyone who has dedicated their time. I know I can't mention all the names, but you have been extremely helpful and supportive. I just want to say thank you. May the Lord bless you all. So to my husband, I had not forgotten you. Last, save the best for the last, Mr. Sebatta. Thank you. Unfortunately, I cannot see you. I can't even see the children. But without your support, this would not have been possible. You have been there for me. You've let me be me. You have let me chase my dreams. Without your support, none of this would have happened. You have really allowed me the space to achieve my dreams. I want to thank you for being the father and mother. I have been absent. Honestly, I've been absent emotionally, physically. I've not really been there. To the children who I can't see, I imagine Manuela is there, Precious, Chosen, and Elijah. I hope all of you are there. I just want to say thank you so much. I know I really can't see, but to the forum. Okay, now I can see you here. Now they disappeared again. But I want to say I love you, my children. And I want you to know that it is possible. So you can also study hard. I am glad that you're there. I'm thankful to your dad for bringing you. And for all the support, everyone who's worked with me. I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you. I thank you so much. I love you all, and God bless you. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Deborah. I would like to thank all of you. I would like to thank the examiners, the panelists, Professor Nanyu, and of course, I would like to thank Harriet Nambos, the head prefect. Yeah, thanks for holding. Yeah, I would like to inform you all that, her PhD was fully funded by a project whose principal investigator is Professor Sewan Kambo. Of course, I coordinate that PhD program, and Harriet puts everything together. She's the manager. She's our boss. Yeah. So I would like to thank you, everyone, and Deborah. Thanks for being resilient. I know some of us are a bit hard. Yes. But at the end of the day, when we're hard on you, you excel. So I would like to end here by wishing everybody a very nice afternoon. Those ones who are still in the daytime, very nice day. Thanks very much. And once again, Shenuka and Professor Nanyu, thanks very much. And I think we end here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.